Anything you can say will be held against you.
In the court of public opinion, maybe. All right. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Panels on Pages. My name is Dalibor, and I am joined today by a very special guest, a young man I have met one time in person many years ago at a convention and purchased his up here, this guy right here. It's a little big print of his character, uh, Sapphire Spectre. Man, I couldn't think of the first word for a second.
Totally. A lot of people mess up and say Star Sapphire.
That's what I was gonna say. That I was like, that's not right though. That's not right. JT Molloy, how you doing, man?
Not bad. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Have you done any cons this year? I know cons are kind of coming back.
Yeah, two in the past month or so. Like I did Cincinnati. Like I hadn't in a long time. I hadn't since like C2E2 right before the pandemic. I was there with Cold War, but yeah, I did Cincinnati about a month ago, and then I just did Wizard World last weekend. It was pretty dead there at Wizard World. It's still always fun.
I mean, it's Wizard World. It's been dead for 6 years.
Yeah.
But that was the last one. So you went to the last Wizard World. That's wild.
Right.
It's a crazy time. I honestly thought they should have ended that show probably 5 years ago.
You're right. I went to Wizard World as an artist in like 2007. That was my first con ever as an artist. I didn't even have a comic. I didn't have anything. I just wanted to see what it was like. So I went and I did like some commissions for people or whatever, but I was like, hey, here's half of the comic I'm working on. That was at this time, it was called Sigma 7X, which was like about like a bunch of frat boy superheroes based off me and my idiot friends from back then. But yeah. So I didn't even have anything. I was just kind of like, oh, here's your Kitty Pride.
I mean, hey, you gotta get started somehow. But 2007, that might have even been back when I started going to conventions too, because that was the golden age though. That was the golden age. That's when prices were still reasonable. You could actually go and like buy your ticket for the whole weekend and still have money to buy a commission from an artist or to buy a comic book or whatever.
Right, totally. Back in like 2003, I think was like the first con I ever went to as like a fan, and like I got New Mutants 98. That's the Deadpool one, right? Yeah. For like $15.
Wow.
Because nobody gave a shit about Deadpool back then.
You still got that.
I sold it. I actually sold it to get I've been kind of like slowly getting rid of my comic collection to build my Amazing Spider-Man comic collection. So I like traded it for like a Death of Gwen Stacy or something. 121.
Okay. See, what's funny is, and this is the topic we're going to be getting into today. We're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man in general, and adaptations more specifically. But I want to say my first comic book in America was an Amazing Spider-Man issue. That was my first introduction to the comic book format. I had seen like the cartoon at the time. But I went on a road trip with my uncle, and we stopped at a gas station or whatever, back when you could just buy comics basically anywhere.
Right.
And we stopped at a gas station, and I saw this cover, and it was Spider-Man, but he had a really different costume. And my Spider-Man in the comics was Ben Reilly, and
mine too.
and when they just brought him back, which is insane because they've like done a bunch of stuff with him over the years, but like. When I picked it up, I was like, this costume is awesome. Like, there's so much stuff. Why is he blonde? What's going on? So I was like, I got to buy this. And then that was I think it was the first appearance of Delilah. Delilah, she's like an assassin.
Yeah.
And she had like, and what I remember about this, and this might even be like when my like process junkie phase started. I really love the fact that her word bubbles, like when she like emphasized words, they were different colors and they were bigger letters and they were fancier letters.
As if like everything she said was sensual or something when she hit those accents.
Yeah,
you know?
like she was sing-songy about it. And like it gave her so much character in just that I was just blown away. I was like, this is fucking awesome.
I think on that first page she was actually singing, and then she like took the microphone and stabbed somebody.
Yes. Oh my God.
I remember I love that era so much. She ended up like working for the Rose and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. which I'd only seen the cartoon, so like I was like, who the hell is the Rose? And there was no internet back then. I had not
Hmm.
even, at that point, I hadn't even seen a Wizard magazine yet, so I had no fucking clue.
Yeah.
So I was just into the deep
Same.
end.
And then I got I remember my brother bought for me when like my brother's 6 years younger than me, so he was like a little kid when I was a slightly older kid, and he bought me like the Alien Costume Saga trade paperback,
Yeah.
the one where like there's like a spotlight on him and he's got the symbiote, you know. So I was like, ooh, like I remember reading that and being like, holy shit, this beats the crap out of that cartoon, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but they were really into the Rose around then, and like the Jason Masondale Hobgoblin, Mackendale, Masondale, I always forget, but like yeah, I remember the Rose being featured very prominently. There's always a crime boss in Spider-Man comics.
Yeah.
Like no
Yeah,
matter
of
what
course.
era, whatever era it is, there's always a crime boss like over everything, controlling
For
everything.
sure. And I think the Kingpin at that time was like heavily in Daredevil. So
Mhm.
Spider-Man needed his own.
Exactly.
You gotta
And
take
I'm
it.
pretty sure the Rose was still Wilson Fisk. I mean, Richard Fisk around then. So I think it was Kingpin's son in that. I think that was
Oh
still the first.
shit. I forgot about the kid. Because
Yeah.
on the show, he had a kid, but it was Willie. And he was just like kind of a no character until he like went to prison and then he came back kind of as a badass. Like it was all right.
Because I
But
think
I
one or
forget.
two other people took up the Rose mantle, but I think the first one was Richard Fisk.
Oh, that's cool. See, that's that lore shit. That's that when you're reading comics for a long fucking time and somebody whips off the fucking mask and it's like, oh, it's you. You've been here fucking 40 years, but
Right.
you're this guy now. Like that's the coolest shit because I remember that was supposed to be what happened with Apocalypse because that was supposed to be the owl originally. Uh,
Apocalypse was supposed to be the owl.
yeah,
No
if you
kidding.
look at that first like cameo in the last page of whatever issue that was, when like he turns around and he says, Apocalypse is coming or whatever,
Mhm.
the outfit looks completely different than what he looks like in the next issue. They
Oh,
literally
gotcha.
between issue like but between the time that they drew it and put the words down, they had changed what that was going to do because
Gotcha.
I forget what the reason was, but they just changed it last fucking minute, and then they just out of all that just came Apocalypse because yeah, it was just gonna be the owl. It was gonna be
Interesting.
yeah.
Did you have the silhouette with the Wolverine hair and everything? Like,
Uh,
I
did
mean,
he have the
or
Wolverine hair? I don't think he had the hair, but I think he had it almost looked like he had like that coat, kind of like that coat
mm,
that he used to have.
right.
But yeah, no, he they I think they might have even modified it originally to make it a little different. But I know he did not look like Apocalypse looked in the next issue.
Right.
But yeah, they were just like, yeah, it's gonna be the owl. That was gonna be the big reveal. And I think they had decided that like the owl was gonna be like they had gotten dead one of the many times that everybody dies. So they were like, you can't use him. He's dead. Like he just died over in Daredevil or whatever. So they're like, oh shit. So then they fucking came up with a whole new thing, like last minute. I think they talk about it in that Chris Claremont's X-Men documentary, which YouTube has been just like, you want to watch this? Even though I've already watched it, it's like, hey, you want to watch this? Although it's a good documentary. It's interesting to see like from his own perspective, kind of like
Nice.
what all happened in the 90s because that was
I love Chris. He's awesome.
he's cool people. When I first met him, I was just like, I think it was the first time I've ever been like nervous to meet someone because I
Yeah.
was like, this is the fucking dude. This is
Yeah.
the dude. Like I wasn't even around for that era, and I didn't read. At that point I hadn't even read that era.
It's like
But,
Stan and
but
Jack
like I knew
created X-Men, but like he really created X-Men. You know what I mean? Like,
he developed it into
yeah.
what it is today.
I
Like
mean, Cockrum and Byrne or whatever too, but but him through and through for like 20 straight years. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the shakeups, a lot of the shit that's changed over the years, they were like, hey, Chris, you want to come back and just do some wild shit for a while? And he's like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And he comes back, and then it was like that Revolution era. I think everyone forgets that when it was like issue 100 of the adjectiveless X-Men title, that like era, Chris Claremont came back to write that. That's why a bunch of like Excalibur characters and villains and shit were in that. Like the blue slavers, those were from Excalibur. Like
right.
people forget that era was Claremont, but because everything fucking changed, he was just like,
Yeah.
fucking throw it all in a blender. Let's see what happens.
I had checked out on X-Men in the late 90s for a while, but my cousin Kevin Folliard, who I don't know if you see him like post on my stuff or whatever, he's a really good writer, and he's friends with Chimera and all that stuff too. And he kept collecting X-Men the whole way through, and I eventually like just kind of took some of his comics and was reading them like in the late 90s, like the pre-Morrison stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is pretty good actually, you know. I never cared for Maggot, but the rest of the stuff going on.
I gotta say, that is still to date, that is still maybe the Hickman era is probably winning out in the long run for me. But up until whatever end of 2019, early 2020, when Hickman came on, that was my favorite era of X-Men, because it was like, hey, we had all this fancy shit, but let's just take all of that away. Xavier's gone. Fucking Cyclops retired after having a literal fucking bomb in his chest or his stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and here's just two wild new kids. Like, here's Marrow, who is a murderer, outright murderer, and Maggot, who is just like a pile of fucking mystery, and also shoots his intestines out as fucking slugs that eat everything, which is the craziest power. I was just enthralled by that whole era, because like it was just like a bunch of new shit while they were trying to rebuild like what made X-Men. It was
right.
It was my favorite shit. And then going into like kind of finding Xavier and rebuilding the team, and then they eventually fight off Magneto in the Magneto War, and then like they resolve the whole Joseph storyline poorly, very, very fucking poorly, because they were like,
I remember that.
he's a clone. When I flipped that page and I read I think, what was it, the like scientist that was examining him, he's like, every single, like, down to the molecular level you are Magneto. He's like, but down to the molecular level every piece of you is a magnificent forgery. I read that, I almost burned the book. I was so mad, because I was like, didn't we just do this in Spider-Man?
Yeah,
like everyone lost their shit over the clone saga, and because they kept going back and forth. And you know, hindsight and retrospect is always like 2020, but like you find out why this shit happened after the fact. But during like when you were, you know, if you were reading Spider-Man in 1994, 1995, and this Ben Reilly guy shows up, Scarlet Spider, and now it's like, oh, he's actually the original Peter Parker, the guy we've been reading for 40 fucking years is the clone.
Yeah, I wrote about that recently, because I was like, I understand if people were, because we both, it seems, got into it during Ben Reilly. So what's interesting is that like almost literally at the same time, because my first issue was 412, and that was when like Peter Parker got beat up in an alley by like a bunch of hobgoblins, like cybernetically enhanced goons, like, and Ben Reilly's
because his power was on the fritz, right?
Yeah, and Ben Reilly's coffee shop got set on fire by somebody, and so so that was probably like 2 issues apart or something. But yeah, so it's like, I understand when people like were betrayed when their Spider-Man was revealed to be you know what I mean, and it was clearly editorial trying to like undo the whole marriage thing, and because they're like, well, what do we do, we're like at a dead end now, you know. So like they just came up with this asinine thing, and it's like, you can't do that, you know what I mean, like you just can't. I don't know, it's like yeah, like the readership is supposed to turn over, you know, like at least it was supposed to back then, you know,
right?
Where it's like kids like read it from 13 to 15 and then get into something else, so like people wouldn't notice, you know what I mean,
Right.
But come on, like people are still gonna notice. There's still long-term fans, and it's kind of dumb that they like had to like legitimately think they were gonna like bring this guy back, and it's like, hey, this guy hasn't been Spider-Man since the 70s, but he is now.
Right. And it was
forever.
and like in all respects, it was like a throwaway story. I think it was a single issue back in the day. The clone gets like tossed into a fucking, like, it dies and it gets tossed into a smokestack to like burn up to like get rid of the evidence. And then they just, when they brought it all back, they just kept like digging shit up and making it more complicated. And then what's funny is I was reading what the fuck was it? The Spider-Man, was it a Spider-Man team up? Might have been Spider-Man team up at the time. That it was a Spider-Man team up with the Avengers, but then it was like, oh, this is actually the Spider-Man robot from when Kang made a robot of Spider-Man, and they're just like digging up all this shit from like the past to just try to like, it just felt like they were just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. Because what was happening, and this is like stuff I've seen through various documentaries on the era. Was it Macchio was the Spider Group editor? Him
Mhm.
and damn it, I always forget the guy that had whoever had the X-Men thing, because the X books were doing great, and it became like this like internal fight. So they were just
Yeah.
like, we just need to do like, up the ante, he's the clone. Nope, he's not the clone anymore. Peter's dying. Like, just throw shit at it to make it crazier and crazier. We just want to we just want to like get up to the same level as X-Men.
Right.
And I was like, that's like and I just, like, going back, I'm so glad that I was not, like, I wasn't in a position. I was a kid and my mom was working all the time and we were poor. So like I couldn't get comics all the time. So I was getting it bit by bit, piece by piece. And eventually I was buying Wizard, and I was getting more information from Wizard through like the, issue reviews and stuff like that and previews, that like I was getting it in small doses, sometimes months apart. I can't imagine being a reader like in your teenage years. You were like, you've been with Spider-Man, and then it's just like one thing after another being thrown at you.
Right.
Like that would
That
have
was
fucking killed me.
I remember I made a note where it was like the first half of the Clone Saga sucks. It's like so bad. It's like almost unreadable. Like where it's like, you're the clone. No, you're both the clone. Ah, ha, ha, ha. And like the Jackal's going nuts. And then there's like the spider side guy who looks like an idiot. And like just everything just is awful looking and awful reading. And then it kind of hammered out once they like put Ben Reilly in the costume and let Peter have a life of his own for a bit. Like, and that's when we both jumped on. It was like, then they were telling Spider-Man stories again. You know what I mean? It was like, first of all, that costume is awesome. I love it, with the giant spider on the front and the back, and then like the exterior web shooters, like killer. And like,
how do you feel about the newer version of it that they?
It's okay.
The like offset Spider. That's what I was like, did he draw it wrong? I was like, is he a bad artist?
Right, exactly, because like they put it here like in the spot that a Star Trek insignia should go or something, right? And then, like, had it jet out from there. But then when he's twisting and turning, you're like, it does look like, did they do it wrong? Yeah.
And it's funny because they bring it up, but in reference, he's like, I've already got a costume, and because I haven't fully read it, but I like skimmed through the couple issues he's been in so far, and he's like, I've got a costume, and they're like, you need to stop dressing like a 15-year-old, I forget what basically you need to stop dressing like a kid, because they were talking about the fucking Scarlet Spider costume that he's been stuck in since he turned evil. That was a whole fucking thing.
Right.
Like, oh man, Ben Reilly got fucking shafted for a long time.
Yeah, he did. I was still having fun a little bit with the Peter David run, though. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, well, since he's not the real Spider-Man anyway, like they can kind of, like take some liberties with how nuts he's gone. You know what I mean? After dying 1,050 times.
Oh, you're talking about the Scarlet Spider book?
Yeah, Peter David, the one where he went to like Las Vegas and stuff.
And
Mark Bagley was drawing it.
I was a big fan of that because, especially at the end, because he died that final time, and they said if you die again, you're gonna fucking be broken. Like, you can't come back from this.
Right.
So to like when I saw the preview and they were like, Ben Reilly's back in costume, I was like, but fucking how? I thought he was broken. I thought he wasn't gonna be able to be like a good human being after this.
Right. But yeah, I don't know, we'll see where it goes. I've only read 75 Legacy 876 or whatever they're doing. I've only read that first one where Peter gets like poisoned at the end or whatever. I haven't gone beyond that. I think one or two.
I really wish they would fucking decide what numbering they're gonna go with. I'm
right.
I'm having to deal with that right now. I'm building up my Thunderbolts collection, and I'm like, oh yeah, these were like 100 issues, but I'm like, but wait, they're counting the new Thunderbolts, and it's like, so in some versions of the trades, this is counted as the third volume of Thunderbolts. I'm like, how is it the third volume if it starts with 110? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like,
I know.
like,
Just stick to the original number.
Like,
come on.
like no one's confused. If you say Uncanny X-Men 746, no one's confused by that. I get that it might be hard. People might see that as an impediment, but like, I honestly think DC, which is like, this might be the fucking only time I've ever said this, I think DC is doing digital comics right.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck. I don't think DC Comics is doing anything right, but that's what they're doing right. Because like, for set was it $75 a year or whatever for Infinite, you can fucking read anything that they have, and they keep adding shit. And then I think it's like six months behind on new shit. So like, you won't even be that far behind. Even let's say you buy no singles.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm reading the first issue of Death Metal, by the time the last issue of Death Metal is coming out, I'm not that far behind.
Right.
So like, and it's part of this thing that I pay for, and I can just read, and I can read like not every issue of Action Comics, but I think they have like 700 or 800 issues of Action Comics. Like, I've got plenty of reading material to fucking be a while.
Right.
And like, I don't have to have 200 fucking short boxes.
The accessibility makes a lot of a big difference. Like, even for my own comic, it was like, I just decided, like, against I don't know, not necessarily against, I just kind of insisted on my friend / manager Lisa that like I was like, all right, you know what, every time somebody backs a new Kickstarter, they get all the digitals, you know what I mean? Like, just like when I Kickstart issue 3, they get 1, 2, and 3, and then eventually I'm going to add the earlier prequel graphic novels to that too, so that they can just get caught up, you know what I mean? Like, so that, because, you know, like if I Kickstart an issue and somebody's getting only the 4th one and didn't put the add-ons for 1, 2, and 3 or anything like that,
Right.
then I still want them to be able to read the little saga I got going. So it's like, I'm just going to be like, here's a folder with everything up till this one. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's just kind
That's
of
cool. We had this conversation. I thought there wasn't any digital tiers on this last Kickstarter. That's why I didn't jump on. I was like, I don't collect singles, so I got to have digital.
I know, right? And like, yeah, was it you that was telling me about like, like packs and stuff that like,
yeah, dude, I did after that conversation, I did a whole editorial in my magazine about it. So I was like, there's apparently more than one person out there that thinks that like digitals aren't necessarily a thing, and some people that just don't know about these packs. Like, I just backed it's over here somewhere, the 4th volume of Impure Blood by Nathan Lewis. He does these indie packs, and he just hooks up with a bunch of different creators, and you know, you get the first issue of X, Y, and Z, so you get like little tastes. That's why actually I backed Starlight when Starlight just did 1 through 3 or 1 through 4.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Ooh,
that's why I backed that, because I got Starlight 1, like the preview, through one of the other Kickstarter packs. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. But then I was like looking on their website, they're not selling it because they're doing some shit. They're trying to get distribution deals, so they're not selling digitally right now. So the only way to get it is through the Kickstarter. So I was like, oh shit, you're doing another Kickstarter. Awesome, I'm in. Like,
I might have to do like a get caught up tier. You know what I mean? Because I want
100%.
I want everybody to read them all in a row. So like, it's like whatever the newest one is, I'll just like adjust the price as it goes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe by the time I'm on issue 5, it'll be like 15 or something. I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but you know what I mean? Just like to be like, here's if you just want digital, here's the get caught up and everything library price. You know what I mean?
That's absolutely, that's a huge, I've done that so many times, because people are like, oh, because what was it? Concrete Comics did a thing recently. I had never heard of them up until like a year ago. And they were like, hey, we're doing like this new issue of one of their books. I forget which one it was, but it was like, oh, you could just get the entire Concrete library for this price. And it was like issue 1 and 2 of one book, issue 1 and 2 of this other book, issue 1 of this other book. I was like, dope. Yeah, let's do that. Because then I know all these characters. And I just started reading them, and it's actually interesting. the one book I started reading, because they just had another Kickstarter for issue 3, and I was like, well, let me see if I actually like this book and I can jump on with this Kickstarter. I read the first 2 issues, and I was like, there's never been a situation where I've read a comic book where I am supposed to not like the main character. Like, the title character is like not a likable person.
Nice.
Like, she's an asshole to everybody. She's like, and I was like, wow, you're really not supposed to like this person. So like, but she's the fucking headliner. This is interesting to me. So
that's kind of cool. It reminds me of my friend Kara's book, Fire Bitch. That comic is really funny because yeah, she's literally like a social media whatchamacallit, influencer, you know, like a total like thought, if you will. And like she like gets fire powers from an alien world by accident, because they were supposed to go to the guy she was at the time, because it's like R-rated, and like the like beam that like is supposed to hit the guy hits her instead. So that's it's like this total jerk gets these powers, and like she, you know, has a little bit of redemption arc and stuff, at least from the first issue, but she's still just a total jerk, and everything she said is like Kara's like extremely crass sense of humor just like flowing out of that chick's mouth. Like, it's so funny.
That's cool. See, like, I like that. That's a different take. It's not like to me, there is place for the good, wholesome superhero. Like, that to me was Superman. So like, honestly, I wasn't a big fan when they did like Man of Steel as a movie, as a good movie. The DCU movies are for the most part fine. But like, I like a hopeful Superman. I like Superman as a beacon of hope. So when like he was sad the whole movie, and then he was like snippy with the government, and like, I was like, I mean, I get like when Jonathan Kent is not supposed to tell Clark, yeah, maybe you should have let him die. I don't know.
I think that
fucked me up.
Literally the only part of the movie, yeah, that was bad. Literally the only part of the movie I liked was like the last 5 minutes of Man of Steel. I was like, oh man, the last 5 minutes of Man of Steel kind of feel like a Superman movie. It's the previous like 120 that make me want to die. Like,
I was just like, oh, okay.
It's all shot like a drug commercial too. It's like, what is
oh my this? God, yeah. The fucking the Snyder filter is a real fucking thing. I just watched what the fuck's his Netflix movie, Army of the Dead. Good flick, like for what it is. It's a fucking great flick.
I heard it's like weirdly out of focus like all the time or something.
He used like all these antique lenses and shit. We watched like this 30-minute making of thing. He used all these like fancy antique lenses. He literally said the movie is way more in focus than I thought it would be. I was like, geez. They gave you a budget and you were like, let's try some shit.
He's a really gifted director, but he really shouldn't be doing anything but other people's scripts or stories, or have just have no input. You know what I mean? Like, somebody should have that guy be like, I don't know, the cinematographer and direct, but have no input on anything else, because I don't know. Shoots himself in the foot.
And I think I don't know. I think he set up this wildly immense DCEU, and I would have been down for it if they had just said, "Cool, let's do this universe." I would have been down for it.
It looks great. It looks like a DC universe should, except for the Joker. But like everything else, like, is just like, all right, you threw the baby out with the bathwater. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean,
it's like we just got a Batman trilogy. Like, Nolan he went a little too hard into the realism for me, but I still like Nolan's trilogy, mostly the first one. But like, it's like, he set up very specifically stuff that Batman comics fans knew, that like, he throws the gun in the water. He's like, no guns. And like, he tells Ra's al Ghul right out, I will not kill this man. I'm not executioner. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I appreciate you saying Ra's al Ghul properly.
Yeah.
That shit bothered.
No, none of that Ra's al Ghul.
The fact that they called him Ra's al Ghul, and the fact that they said Falcone, I was like,
yeah, instead of Falcone, that threw me off too.
I was like, you're gonna go back in time and tell Al Capone some shit?
Al Capone.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right. I know. Raish, they made like a, even before that was a movie, like they had it was like an episode of Batman Beyond where like Terry McGinnis was like, "Who's this Ra's al Ghul anyway?" And then Bruce was like, "It's Raish," like that's a common
Right. Like, and they
mispronunciation.
and that's the thing is like they set the bar already. This wasn't like, oh, it's only ever been in comics, so like we can do whatever we want. It was on the animated series for 7 fucking years.
Yeah.
So like we had precedent. Like this wasn't something difficult. And then
Right.
on fucking in the Arrowverse, they couldn't decide. Every person said it differently, and I was like, you guys are fucking wild.
Right. But it's funny, everybody talks about how dark Batman Begins is or something. I'm like, I don't know. I think it's a very, very hopeful movie, just like Superman and Batman should be. It's just is shot dark and there's dark things in
Yeah,
it. But Batman
yeah.
himself is like a character like bringing people to the light, and like he doesn't kill and he doesn't use guns, and that was like throughout the whole trilogy. Like, I mean, you can say what you want about, oh, that guy died in a fire and in the Ra's al Ghul's fortress fell or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Batman in
like
the comics locked the KG Beast in a fucking
yeah,
vault once. Like,
that was pretty bad.
Batman is hardcore.
Yeah, but like for the most part, they got it right. And then like on a character level, and then Ben Affleck comes in, Scott Snyder comes in, and he finally looks like comic book Batman. It looks
God,
like
I was so happy.
like a
And
Jim Lee drawing walked out of the pages.
For real. And he was like actually fighting because they gave him a better suit. He was actually doing martial arts, not these fucking stiff arm things that he was doing in all the other movies.
Totally. Like that scene where he fights the people in the I only saw bits and pieces of Batman Superman. I didn't see the whole thing, but like I stayed away from it once I found out. It's like, yeah, he you remember how we spent 3 movies talking about who Batman is and why he doesn't kill and all that stuff? Yeah, well, now he murders people and he's trying to kill Superman. He's trying to kill Superman with a spear.
The funny thing is that I fought with my cousin, because my cousin is a big fan of Henry Cavill Superman, and like he's a big fan of those movies in general. I fought him for 2 straight years about Batman Superman, and I was like, this is not fucking Batman. Like I was like, Batman does not just fucking wildly shoot fucking bad guys from the car, like blowing up buildings and cars and trucks and that's not Batman. Right. And then it like eventually I was like it was like a flow of fucking thought thing. I was just like bitching about the movie, and then I was like, no, that's it, this universe. And that was like the distinction I had to make with myself. In this universe, Batman is just way more emotional. He's just way more emotional, way more emotionally deeply scarred from his parents and the loss of presumably Jason, and like all of these things that they have just built upon one another. So when he saw Clark, even as a potential maybe sort of threat, instead of making contingencies like he has with everything else in the comics and animated and everything, he was just like, fuck this, we got to take this guy out.
Just dealing in the possibility
exists. Yeah, exactly. And it was like it's a different take, and it definitely took me a fucking minute to like make that distinction. And that's honestly, ever since then, I really don't give a shit what they show as long as the movie is good. Like I didn't like Birds of Prey. I keep calling it Harley Quinn.
Fantabulous something or other of Emancipation.
But I keep calling it Harley Quinn in the cameos, because like to call it Birds of Prey would indicate to me that there's a movie about a team of people, and it's like not that until like the last 10 minutes. So like the rest of the time is just like 4 or 5 independent stories happening simultaneously. So it's not really like a team movie. So I never understood.
Yeah, how do you make a movie called Birds of Prey starring Harley Quinn? She's not even like associated with that team. You know what I mean? Like,
and like I thought they did Cassie real dirty. Like Cassie is like one of the dopest Batgirls. They did her real dirty in that. Like, yeah,
I saw that from a distance. I didn't see the movie, but I saw enough of it to know that like that's not my Cassie. That's not.
And that's the thing that and like, but the
Orphan or whatever she's called.
Yeah, the thing about that was no, she's Batgirl again, which I fucking love.
Oh, is she? Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. The DC's like, oh, yeah, it all fucking happened. So now everyone's like, through various plot devices, finding out everything that happened.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So her and Stephanie were in the same room, and Stephanie was in the spoiler costume. She's in the orphan costume, and they see like a hologram of themselves. I don't remember the exact context, but they see a hologram of themselves, basically like pre-New 52. And they're both kind of like, oh shit. And Cassie especially, and this almost made me want to cry. She was like, they let me wear the fucking logo. Like they,
Oh wait, I
like,
did read that. Oh, that was during James Tynion's detective run,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
they
yeah.
like saw through that looking glass about like, because the story that was going on was about Tim Drake, future Batman, coming back in time, and he was a nut job.
Oh,
And
really?
like, yeah,
That's funny. But yeah, like that, and I thought that was like that like felt really good because I was like, oh man, like because that was like she had no family, like orphan, you know, like that was the
Mhm.
whole thing. She had no family, so for her to like see that she was accepted, I was like, oh man, that feels good. Like that was a good moment for her because I really liked her as a character because like her whole evolution of being like a mute
Yeah,
assassin child into like a grown human being with complexity and being able to speak for herself, like that was a huge journey for her. And then when they were like New 52, fuck all your shit, like
yeah. I know. That makes me so mad. Like, I know, like post Rebirth, they started doing course corrections. That's what got me back in it because I was a huge, huge Tim Drake and spoiler fan throughout like the Chuck Dixon Robin era and all that stuff. And like, I read literally every Robin comic, and even Red Robin, like all the way up to that.
dude, I loved Red Robin. I loved
It was
his whole
killer.
evolution.
Loved it. He
I
took
loved
down the
him,
whole League of Assassins by himself, or
dude.
League of
He
Assassins.
like the way they pushed him to like grow as a person, and they like said it was all built on stuff that existed, right?
Mhm.
In Teen Titans, after the whole Young Justice thing, when they did like the future jumps and stuff, and he saw like future evil Tim Drake Batman, he was like, why the fuck are you wearing that? He's like, I don't want to be Batman. The fuck are you doing? He's like, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be Batman. I don't want to grow up to be Batman. That's not my course. So like when he went the Red Robin route, I was like, that's fucking dope. He is
Yeah.
building this whole separate, his own identity. And when they were like, fucking New 52, where they're like, no, now he's like kind of a weird amalgam of both of those characters.
It was so stupid. But then, like, if you this is when I came back, was during Rebirth, because I had heard that Spoiler was back, and
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
told me it was really good, and I'm like, all right, I'll give this a shot. So before James Tynion became like the head Batman writer, before he was like a kind of a superstar like he is now, I started reading Detective, and I shredded through it all. Like, I just backtracked, shredded through it all, and his run was like all about like Batman building like a team, you know, and they
Yeah.
were based out of like a cave like in the middle of the city. I don't think it was the clock tower. I think it was a new place. It's called like the Belfry. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like a reformed Clayface, spoiler, Red Robin,
Oh yeah, I remember Clayface.
Orphan, and somebody else. But yeah, it was really cool. And like Batwoman, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And like they James Tynion was a huge Tim Drake fan, and I could tell because he reestablished a lot of the canon that they ditched during New 52. Like, they when they showed a flashback of who Tim Drake was, it was like they show him just like in A Lonely Place of Dying. Like, he shows up at the door, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I discovered who you are because I saw Robin's parents die, Dick Grayson's parents die at the
Right.
thing, and he's like playing little detective, and then he broke the Robin suit out of the case and helped him from Two-Face. So they reestablished like a lot of his canon origin, you know,
Right.
and then like he started writing him like he should be, where he is like the more like calm and collect version of Robin than some of the others had been. And they brought back an approximation of his early 90s costume, you know, but just like with a few more bells and whistles, and like a double R for Red Robin, where like
Yeah.
just the single R would have been. But like, he did a great job. Tanya did a great job of reestablishing Stephanie and Tim as like their old selves. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I like, but
they're technically not, but they got closer. You know,
right.
so
My only beef with New 52 and the early Rebirth was that they kept her as spoiler. Like I thought she acquitted herself excellently as Batgirl.
Those were great
So
stories too. Yeah.
so when they, and especially this was like the other like part of it that sucked as like a fan reading, they didn't tell the writers New 52 was happening. So when I forget who wrote Incorporated, when the first chunk of Incorporated happened, it was meant to be the whole series as one,
Mm-hmm.
but they had to stop it because New 52 was about to happen. So
Yeah.
even though a bunch of the Incorporated stuff included Stephanie Brown Batgirl, the second half, which was in New 52 universe,
Right.
happened as if that happened, but without her.
Yeah.
It was so strange.
It's like, don't worry, Morrison, you can finish half of the second half of your half story.
It was
So weird.
Man, I was so salty with that. Granted, I liked actually what they did with her eventually, like how they built her up in the New 52 and later. But the best thing to come, like the best things to come out of the Batman books in the New 52, honestly, Court of Owls, which has become kind of like this new, like first new Batman thing for a long fucking time.
Yeah.
And there was the one run that was Batman Eternal. It was a weekly book. It really like piggybacks off of Court of Owls, so it's like it happens a little while later. But it was for the most part self-contained. Like it was referring to some things that were happening in the other Bat books, but it was a self-contained 12-issue run. Or no, it was a weekly. It was weekly, so it's 52 issues. But it was like this whole thing where a bad guy in like who came out of the whole Court of Owls thing was basically like putting Batman through his paces. He had sent out this invite to fucking everybody, all the bad guys, to come.
Was it one of the head talons or whatever?
Or
no, those are just like the low level assassins, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, he sent calls out to everybody. Two-Face, Hush, everybody, and basically like come to Gotham, fuck his shit up. And they like set it up to be Calculator, which was like, you got there and you were like, fucking Calculator? Like of all fucking people, that's the mastermind. And then you find out he got the same fucking invite. And then you get the big reveal at the end. And like it was just this really, really cool self-contained thing that I liked better than Death of the Family and all this other shit that was happening. Like that was good, but all
Death
of
of the Family started amazing and then ended with a whimper. Like that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, it was like, oh, cool thing. And then like the best part that came out of or no, the Death in the Family, the first one,
right? Yeah.
What was Joker died, but then like was in the background and he was the fucking guy at Arkham. He was fucking putting on a show the whole time. And then you like get into the mindset of he actually can straight man for a long time. He's not just this out of control laughing lunatic guy. His whole thing is control. And then it becomes fucking terrifying.
Like, yeah. Joker's a mastermind. Some people forget that, like some people want to write him as like this babbling lunatic, but he's not actually insane. This is my theory, and I think Paul Dini agrees with me, is that he's not insane. He just acts like he is. You know what I mean? Yeah, like he's like criminally insane, but he's not like mentally insane.
Yeah,
you know
like
what I
mean? He's not deranged. He doesn't like not know what he's doing.
Like, yeah, he doesn't hear voices in his head or anything like that.
He's fully in command of everything that's happening.
In fact, like one of my favorite Joker stories was Devil's Advocate by Chuck Dixon and I forgot who drew it, Graham Nolan. And it was like Joker's insanity defense fell through. So he was on death row for the first time ever. And for a crime he didn't commit. Somebody was poisoning stamps and they were sending him out.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. And then Joker, you just watch him on death row. You watch him in jail and everything, not with the comfort of Arkham Asylum, and like some giant skinhead tries to fight him or something. And then he like beats him half to death with a shoe or something. And it was, oh man, it was so funny. He shaved his head and you see like little green bits, like on his head. It was such a great story because like everybody was telling Batman, you should just let this go. You know what I mean? Like you should, come on, all the things this guy has done, you should let him Fry, and Batman's like, no, I gotta be the superhero.
And
I gotta
he's,
find the guy
I
who
remember
really
that
did it.
story. I remember
You
that
know,
story. And he comes and he gets him out because he stops him from being killed. Oh
that's
man.
a great ending too, because he's sitting
Yeah.
in the cell with Joker, and he says, like, just remember that every breath you take, you owe to me. And that's the ultimate insult to
Yeah.
Joker, you
Yeah.
know.
That's I really, yeah, that was a like that was a crazy read, because that's like one of those like deeply fucking psychological, like, do you let this guy die even though he's dying for a crime he did not commit? Do you still let
Right.
him die knowing, or do you still save him knowing that he's done all that other shit, knowing that he's killed so many people?
Right.
It's an interesting conundrum.
Yeah,
um
that was a good story. I remember his lawyer asking, like, "Oh, like it's that easy to prove insanity?" And he smashes his face on the table. He's bleeding from his nose. He's like, "It's that easy."
oh my god, yes, yes. um to that point, let's pivot over to adaptations real quick. What did you think of the Joker movie?
I didn't see it because
Oh wow.
that's not that's not Joker to me. I'm see. I was talking about this earlier with somebody. I'm such a huge fan of comic book Joker, like that. They don't ever do that guy. Like there's always something off. You know what I mean? I mean, Cesar Romero, he was in the '60s show and he did a great job. You know, like I always think like people overplay the mustache. I'm like, you're not supposed to notice the mustache. Like TVs were way worse back then. It probably all blurred together. I didn't even
Yeah,
notice it as a kid,
I
you
yeah,
know?
I never think about it when I think back on it,
Right. So he was pretty much
unless
just
someone's
supposed to
pointing
be
it
like
out.
Silver Age wacky comic book Joker, and he did a
Right.
great job with it for a show that was kind of making fun of Batman. But like then like the '89 Joker, Jack Nicholson, very, very close to the comic books. You know what I mean? I mean, they played up the gangster thing. You're not really supposed to know who he is with the red hood. That's kind of the magic of Joker, is he could really actually be anybody of
Right.
any race, because like you don't see him ever. Like maybe in a flashback in Killing Joke, but that's not canonical because it's like a multiple choice or whatever, like he says. So he could really be anybody before he puts that red hood on, but you never see who that is until he takes it off and he's deformed and messed up, and the chemicals have messed up his cheekbones and jaw and made
Right.
him smile and everything. You know what I mean? So it's like uh, they got really close with Nicholson, and then they had to go and mess it up by saying he killed the Waynes. You know, so it's like
In
we got like close, but no cigar.
Batman issue, I think it was Batman the Dark Knight issue 50, like 95. It was like an anniversary issue. They did do a retelling of his origin, and they did show him to be the comedian, basically the same origin as in Killing Joke. So they
Right.
did canonize it effectively.
Which one? Wait, when was that from?
90, 90 94, 94, 95.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know there was a period of time where they were kind of like leaning into that more, but then they kind of unleaned back out of it,
Oh, and I mean,
you
post
know?
post New 52, post Rebirth, we are
Right.
at a true point. Like I was actually going to do a whole video on this, and have like bring someone on to talk about this, because like retcons effectively, like retcons mean that whatever is the new piece of information, a retcon means that that's always been true.
Hmm.
So like where my thought process for that came from was that people were talking about how Scarlet Witch got whitewashed in the movies and such, and because she was Roma and she was a Jew, and rephrase that, she was Jewish. Like, I know that's not a okay way to say that, but like then they were like, oh, she was never his daughter, right? That was
Hmm.
the change in the comics. So then once that happens, that's always been true. So like you go back and that's always now been true.
Right.
So, like when you retcon stuff like that, that's why the whole Peter Parker, Ben Riley clone fucking shenanigans was so crazy. When you say Peter Parker's always been the clone,
Mhm.
you fuck the whole thing up for
I know,
everybody.
right?
As opposed to like a new piece of information that just like adds to shit, which that can also fuck shit up, because that's what they did with what was it, Sins Past?
Yeah, which thankfully got retconned.
That's
Literally,
a,
like that was. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Like that's my biggest fandom.
I never
Um,
read it. I worked at a comic shop at the time and I saw it, and I like flipped through it and shit, and I was like, no, no, we're not gonna
yeah,
read. I'm like, I'm just not gonna read this. This
I
story is
stopped
gonna
reading
finish.
Spider-Man
You're not gonna.
until JMS was done. Like so many people were like, "Oh, that was it for me once they undid the marriage." I was like, I was just glad JMS was gone. Like, give me this brand new day stuff, please, because I wanted that guy gone.
Dude, here's the thing. I
The first couple
honestly,
of issues of his run are okay.
the I mean, like I thought the like bringing in the more spiritual, not spiritual, but like more mystical side of Spider-Man made sense to me. Like, I mean, like it was fine. Like I had no beef with it personally. I like where it's grown into like the Spider-Verse stuff, and that's cool to me. Like that's
It is
interesting to
cool.
me. It's not just this like, because when especially when like white dude number 4, like whoever the writer is, decides to just like infuse a character with like tribal culture of some sort,
Hmm.
it always feels weird to me. It always
Yeah,
has, because I'm like, but like I feel like you're making a lot of shit up, obviously, but it feels like you're trying to ground it in some sort of real culture, and it gets
yeah,
messy and it gets gross. And so, but like when they were like, oh, this is like a dimensional thing, and the fucking, I always forget their names, but like the guy he fought in that was like part of a family. All
Moreland.
the
Yeah,
Moreland, yeah. Like I always forget they have a name, don't they? Like their whole
yeah,
race
they
has a
did.
name.
I've read Spider-Verse, but I only read it once, so I can't remember. But like, yeah,
I read
there
Spider Verse
were
and
like
Spider Geddon. Like
those like energy vampires or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
but they like built them into this whole thing. They built it into this whole mythos about spiders and the spider totems per universe. And then like when Kane came back and like Kane
yeah,
got a clone body of Peter Parker, like there was just like a whole lot of interesting shit that came out of that. But
right.
the initial like, here's this old guy telling Peter, like, here's this old white dude telling Peter, who is another white dude, that he is inherently like mystical from this like deep jungle spider tribe.
Hmm.
That gets weird. That gets a little
Yeah, it was
uncomfortable for
like
me.
when JMS first did it, he just kind of got it. He just brought it up out of nowhere, and he was just trying to get his own stamp on it. And he does that a lot. Every time he takes over a book, he redoes their origin. He did it with Fantastic Four almost right away, just like Spider-Man, where it was like, oh, the rays that hit them in space were actually like coming from like
Is
another
he writing the current run?
planet or something. No, no, no. This was back in like 2007 or 8 or something like that. He wrote
Oh,
Fantastic Four in
because
the
they just did that.
2000s.
They just did that. They
Oh,
just
really?
did the whole story, and I don't know if it's like from that or whatever, but they're saying that um, basically Reed did not screw up. What he did is he prepared them for the necessary cosmic conditions there.
Yeah.
But this planet off in the fucking distance, who had been looking at Earth, and the power structure there was like, these motherfuckers are starting to fly. We need to dead that, because they're gonna come here, they're gonna fuck our shit up. So they
Hmm.
essentially sent a big ass blast of cosmic rays at them.
Right.
So it was insufficient shielding for that additional shit. Reed did not
That's
screw up.
that's kind of like that's the conundrum I have with the Alien movies, like Prometheus and the one that came after Prometheus, whatever it was called, Alien or something
Covenant.
Covenant. Thank you. It was like it's like, is it better if it's an accident like in the original, or is it better if there is more to the lore and it was like the creation of David and the Wayland Corporation and all this stuff? You know what I
Right.
mean? Because on a hard sci-fi level, it works that way because it's like one could argue like if we're playing on hard sci-fi rules that most uh, species on other planets are likely not going to be anthropomorphic. You know what I mean? So like the aliens, because they look like people, and the space jockeys who look like people have origins that tie to our origins as a species in these weird ass new alien movies. There's something kind of neat about that. but it also takes away from like the original mysterious accident aspect of like the original telling. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean? So like, I don't know. It really depends on what side of the bed I wake up on, where I'm like, okay, sometimes it's cool to expand on things, but sometimes it takes away from things to expand too far, you know?
Yeah,
So
100%. And it's hard to tell, honestly. Personally, I like there's kind of like you said, there's kind of pluses and minuses to it. Like
mm,
the Hulk origin is kind of pure to me. To be like he ran out there because this kid was going to get fried, saves the kid, he takes the blast.
right.
There's something pure to that. It's just like it was a selfless act, and in that selfless act, he becomes this fucking machine of fury.
Right. And the Ang Lee movie took away from that by, as beautiful as that movie is, like from a technical level, it's still just stupid on a storytelling level because it just turned the Hulk into not the Hulk. It like everything you think of when you think of the Hulk, they subverted by making it like this weird story about absorbing dad, you know?
Yeah, and he was a science experiment, and the whole thing
Yeah.
was about it was a definitely a different telling.
Yeah.
But even in the comics now, like that's become like they have somewhat mystified Hulk, and it's been weird. Like in the current Immortal Hulk run, the last like 20 issues or whatever, they've like really dove deep into kind of like what happened, and basically what they're saying is that there is what they're calling the Green Door, and like he when he took that blast, he essentially like could have died, or he opens the Green Door, and that's where it all comes from. And it turns out, and spoiler alert for anybody who has not read the current Hulk books but might want to, uh it turns out that the Hulk is essentially the Spectre, because the Hulk is the agent of, I think it said like agent of rage. Is the Hulk is the one below all, is the agent of rage on Earth of the one above all.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, that's yeah. So he's the agent of rage and fury of God. He's God's fury.
That's
Like because
another
because
thing.
Marvel's never gonna say God.
Right.
They call him the one above all, and he's been Jack Kirby more times than not. So I'm just gonna say Jack Kirby.
Right. Like that Fantastic Four run with Wade where
Yeah,
they literally like traveled off the page or whatever. Like
yeah, yeah,
that was fun. But yeah,
yeah.
sometimes there's sometimes where I wrestle with the fact of it's like can superhero comics tell like emotionally and morally complex stories on like the level that like a art house movie should? Yes, but should they? I don't know. You know what I mean? That's
I
kind
think
of
they.
something I grapple with sometimes. It's like, do you take away from the purity of the genre and its pulp roots by inserting that stuff? And I think there's like a happy medium that can be achieved between the two. You know what I mean? But like,
100%. I think there's a
sometimes it
huge.
sways towards that pretension level a little too much. You
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah. I don't like I've never been a fan when they start make like I always look at it as spoon feeding. Like you have a lesson you want to teach, and you're just gonna fucking shove it in my mouth until I fucking swallow. Like there's no complexity to the layout. It's just like here is the lesson. This is the. Do you know that this is the lesson? I want you really to understand that this is the lesson. And I'm like, I'm trying to read the comic, please.
Right.
Like, can you like fit the lesson inside of the story,
Right,
like,
right.
and not like give me 14 captions about the lesson, like
Yeah.
on top of the action. Like,
Exactly. Like the ham-fistedness of it sometimes just kind of gets in the way, where like that was the problem I had with a lot of JMS's writing too, is a lot of times like it was almost as if like he was in the panel talking to you and like saying, well, it was like the end of that Spider Totem story where he's standing there with like that shaman guy and he's like you will say the sun rises uh because of like the earth revolving around the sun and all this stuff, like talking
right.
about like astrophysics. And he's like, but I say it rises because it has to. I see no contradiction. do you? And he like basically like turns to the audience and says, do you? You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's like, you know what, JMS? Yes. Yes, I do.
What's
He
really
got
funny
radio
is I think
fighter.
like when I basically when I came to this country, I like fell for Star Trek and Babylon 5. And not until many years later did I find out that JMS was the guy behind B5.
Mhm.
And he handled, I thought, pretty well. Like as far as all the various, like there's a lot of fucking races of aliens on B5 and a lot of different cultures and how they interact and how they deal with one another. It was all handled pretty well. There
Mhm.
was very rarely was there some like overt here is the fucking message thing. Like it's the difference between how TNG and Voyager were written to like the first season of Discovery to me. I don't know if you've watched the Discovery at all.
I haven't. Like that's one of those shows where it's like this is a problem I have with the culture wars these days is that like everybody on the left side of the culture war says like this is offensive, and then everybody on the right says this is too woke. And then like so sometimes when the right says this is too woke, I'll like be like, oh, maybe it's gonna be like an annoying like after school special and I should stay away from it. But then they'll say that and then I'll watch it and I'll be like, where was the woke? Where's all this stuff that you're whining about? Because this was fine. Like that's what I felt about Picard. I saw Picard and like I kept hearing what it's like, oh, this is a woke disaster or something. I watched it. I'm like, where? Like
I really
the story
didn't.
about AI and stuff. Like, yeah, I get from a Star Trek fan's perspective when they say like it's like they're dropping f-bombs and showing eyeballs being gouged out and stuff. It kind of gives someone the same feeling they have when they watch Man of Steel, where like they're like, this isn't the hopeful Star Trek, this isn't the hopeful Superman, you know what I mean? So it's like I get that aspect of it,
Yeah.
but from a pure Star Trek-y kind of perspective or whatever, I was just like, this is fine. Like, what are you all whining about? Like,
The most like the only like woke thing I could think of in that first season of Picard is maybe when the Admiral tells him like the unmitigated fucking gall. Like but I agreed with her. Like he just came in. He was like, I need a ship. I need a crew. Give it to me. And she's
right.
like, who the fuck are you, dude? Like, you don't work here no more. like
Shut
oh,
the fuck up.
like you know, oh, you've got a name. That's your picture on the wall. Yeah, but you don't work here anymore. Get the fuck out of here. Like that's kind of what that felt like. So like I guess if that was woke, sure, whatever. Like, oh, Picard didn't instantly get his way. I mean, I
Right.
guess if that's
Some people were overplaying some of the stuff they're complaining about because they were like, "Oh, Starfleet's like evil now," and I'm like, "No, they weren't. There was a Romulan insert or what do you call it, mole, you know,
yeah,
in there.
which like
So like
there's a
that
whole
explains
season.
that."
There was a whole season of TNG where the same thing happened. It was just like a
Mhm.
weird worm thing. And they killed the shit out of that. I think people forget a lot. That was the grossest episode of TNG because they killed the shit out of that parasite.
Yeah.
That alien, they like fucking vaporized that thing in its chair. And like, so when anybody complaining about eyeballs being gouged out, like they eviscerated this thing where it stood
Right.
on TNG.
Sometimes I think Star Trek fans overplay uh how hopeful everything should be all the time, 100% all the
Yeah,
time. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
think
but
I've
that's what
always felt
Gene
like
Roddenberry like kind of almost ruined Star Trek's Next Generation by saying like nobody should ever fight. There should be no conflict ever. It's like, all right, Gene, how do we make a show? You know,
yeah,
like
no, you have to have conflict, but that's also like why they fight like this. They don't fight with fists. They fight with this fucking weird thing that never actually hurt anybody. Like that,
to
it's
not hurt the guy in the rubber suit.
yeah, exactly. It's like I've always felt like the idea of of Star Trek is the hopeful part. Like the individual episodes and shit and the way shit is written, people can make bad decisions. People can be bad people. Like
Yeah,
Voyager is like home to me. That's like my shit. Like there was a lot of episodes where most of the crew, there was at least somebody, one person on the bridge crew, at least once a season, did some shit that was highly questionable,
yeah,
highly questionable.
right,
But like they still were doing the right shit, generally speaking, but they still
exactly.
fucked up once in a while.
Right. As long as they end up learning the lesson and reaffirming what Starfleet believes in.
Right.
That's cool. If somebody ends up a cynic, he did it wrong. Unless it's a two-parter. Then at the end of that second part, then they
Yep.
should, you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
like when I watched Picard, I was like, I kept waiting for like the cynicism and the awfulness that people were talking about. And I'm like, I didn't get it. I was like, it was one of those stories where they took you to hell and then took you out of it at the
Yeah.
end, because when like there's about to be a giant space battle and everybody's going to get messed up or whatever, like he talks to Data's daughter and like gives her a big old Star Trekky after school speech, and then
Yeah.
she does the right thing, and I'm like, that's a great Star Trek moment,
Yeah. Huge.
So like I was like, yeah, we got a little ugly getting there, but like at the end it still was cool. It was just like in people say that about the second Abrams movie, where it's like, oh, this was just like a dumb big angry action blockbuster and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that's true to an extent, but at the end he was like he teleported all those missiles onto the ship and blew it up, but he didn't blow up the people in it. They saved all of them.
Yep.
All the crew members. So
Yep.
nobody died. Like except for the people in those buildings that crashed, I guess. But like
they crashed the shit out of that plane.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They 9/11 the fuck out of San Francisco in that movie.
Holy
They
crap,
really
dude.
didn't need to. They did not need to. But
They did
like
but dude, they did the same thing. And oddly enough, this was because of 9/11. In Enterprise, they did the same thing. They wiped out like the entire eastern coast of the United States.
Boy.
Because literally, like, I think right before the end of the first season, or like midway through the first season that they were filming, 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
The show became about this tragedy that happens on Earth, and the Enterprise, the only Warp 5 ship, is out trying to find the bad guys.
Right.
So that became the show. Like, you still have all the other encounters and, missions and stuff like that, but like the overall thing was like, we need to find the Xindi threat. We need to find this threat that we don't know, and we can't see them, and they have no face, and we don't know what they look like. Like, that was, and I never realized that, but I watched an interview with Bakula recently, and I was like, oh shit, like that explains a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Because they had what I always call the fucking the nebula fucking year. Because Andromeda did the same thing, and they did it on Enterprise, and I was like, what the fuck is this problem? Like third or fourth season, they end up in like some sort of we're not where we used to be, then all the fucking rules get thrown out of the fucking show. Right. Because like when they were in this nebula on Enterprise, he's telling them to kill people, he's fucking yelling at people, like Archer's an asshole during that whole season. And I was like, what the fuck is this show now? Like, right. Well, like it's a very, like, it's an interesting storytelling tactic, but like, yeah, you gotta give everybody their whole run. Like you said, Into Darkness was pretty fucking dark.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a mindless in a lot of ways, but like there was the Star Trekkiness of it.
It did. It was still had the morality play at the end.
Yeah.
Of like, like hope for the future kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So like that's why I defend the Abrams movies more than some people do, is because I think they get the feel of Star Trek right. It might be faster, dumber, and louder, but it still gets the feel of Star Trek right, especially the third one. I love the third one. I love Beyond, especially because it's like they tied back into some stuff from Enterprise, where it was like they were talking about like the wars and stuff like that. It's been a long time since
the Romulan War. Yeah.
And like Idris Elba's character was like from an era where like it's like he didn't know what to do with his life because he was a warrior and he doesn't know how to exist in a world without war.
Right.
So like he hates the Federation for it, and I'm like, that's a great Star Trek villain. You know what I mean? Like that's a cool. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of well done. The third is my favorite of those three.
I agree. It felt right. It kind of did the same thing that the third movie and all of this, not the third movie necessarily, but like all the Star Trek movies have done this at one point or another, and that's destroy the Enterprise.
Like, I know, right? Yeah.
I was like, oh fuck, okay. So like 10 minutes in, we're just gonna fucking wipe out the entire ship. All right, fuck me. Even though
they did that in the third movie last time. I was like,
we just launched this. We just launched this refit at the end of the last one. But all right, fine, fuck it. Let's just blow the motherfucker up.
Right. Yeah, they did that in Star Trek 3, the new Star Trek 3, and then the first Generations movie was
Yeah,
when
yeah.
that one got destroyed.
But that one was interesting, was because that was like like real life filming conditions dictating story,
Hmm.
because the quality of the model was not high enough for big screen, because they're
Yeah.
using bigger cameras, bigger lenses, better shit. So like the imperfections in the model, which you lose on fucking CRT TVs in
Hmm.
1995, you see all the fucking imperfections on the 115 inches.
Yeah, right.
Like you see all of it. So they were like, we got to get rid of this fucking thing and we got to go CG. Like
Right. I
but
still
it,
remember, like, seeing, because I grew up on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then I saw the Generations movie, and I remember that was I was like in junior high at the time, so it was like I was starting to kind of notice things about film, and I was already making my own like handheld camera movies with my friends and stuff. Like
nice.
now I'm a video editor and I've made my own movies and I work in TV industry, but like that was one of those times where I was noticing little things that I don't think a lot of people my age were noticing, where it was like I was like, okay, so like I grew up on Star Trek Next Generation TV show where like the set looked very much like a TV set,
Right.
and it was filmed at 30 frames a second and all that stuff. But then when you see the first time they walk onto the bridge in the movie, it's the same set or maybe similar, but like it's like lit like a movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like everything's
Different lighting.
everything's dimmer, everything just like is a little sleeker,
Yep.
moving at 24 frames a second. You know what I mean? So it's like, um, so yeah, I could totally see that. Like, as I never knew that reason. That's cool. It's like they wanted to like ditch the old to get a little more high tech for the movies. And since Star Trek used to be a whole lot more about like every T and it had to be crossed and every I dotted when it came to like continuity with like the like Star Trek writers and nerds, that like
That
there was
that
no
that
way they could have pulled off saying, hey, this is the Enterprise. They would have been like, no, it's not. You know what I mean? Like,
and
so.
they were because in the last, and this is also like part of that whole thing, is in the last season, I think season and a half, they did use, because the model was like, I think they said 4.5 feet. It's a massive fucking model they were shooting with. So they used it for some of the shots. So you'll
Mhm.
see that in like the last couple seasons, if you compare shots, the like windows are smaller on the CG model. In the early seasons, they had two models. So there was like a 2-foot one and a 4-foot one. Just
Okay.
because of the scale of materials, the 4-foot one had no 10 forward, or the 2-foot one had no 10 forward. But they started with the
Oh.
4-foot one. So they started shooting with this little one. Uh, I think one of them got damaged even. So I think they ended up shooting with the other one for a while, and then they went to CG. But like they lost features. So like 10 forward disappeared on one of the models. So like you can see between some shots, like there is just more hull or
That's
less,
funny.
depending on what's going on. So like it's interesting. But yeah,
You can canonize that. You can say every time we're using this model, Guinan is in the Nexus.
she takes all of deck 10 with her.
That is the nerdiest joke I'm gonna make all week.
That's fantastic, though. That's fantastic. So speaking of like the feel of things, I wanna pivot back into what we started talking about, and that's Spider-Man and Spider-Man adaptations. I want to go. I
We
want
were
to go.
supposed to go there. We ended up on like a 20-minute
Whatever.
Star
It is
Trek
what it
tangent.
is. It is what it is. Uh, we got a very different Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man, especially the first one, than we did in Sam Raimi's trilogy.
Mhm.
I did not necessarily love all of Amazing Spider-Man because it was darker and I didn't like it.
I guess it's going back to my Joker thing where I was about to break down each Joker and say where they got it wrong. So it's like the Cesar Romero one, whatever, but like the Nicholson one was wrong for a little bit. And then the Ledger one, it's a guy in makeup. He didn't even go through the transformation, and he doesn't even use this like classic weapons and things like that or poison people. So it's like they got that wrong. As cool as it was, I like the Dark Knight just fine, but like
he's just a
it's still
brutal.
just a little off,
Yeah,
So it's like
he's more realistic,
Right. With the flying car and everything, and the city under siege by one guy in a trench coat. But
Yep.
like and then in Suicide Squad, they put him back in the acid, right? So it's but then they add all these dumb tattoos to him and give him a grill and like make
He turned
Jared
in,
Leto
oh
talk
my
like an
God.
asshole.
He turned into, and what's funny is they hyped him up. Well, let me phrase that. Not they. Granted, I don't know that this wasn't like a studio hype, that this wasn't something the studio put out there to like try to hype it up. But like all the shit that we heard about Jared Leto doing on set to like make people feel uncomfortable because he was the Joker and he wanted them to, like, he was being method or whatever.
Yeah.
He says none of that happened.
Really?
He says he never sent anybody no fucking live rats or anything.
Oh, I thought all that was true. Oh.
He flat out said none of that shit happened.
Oh,
So
wow.
like then I'm thinking, well, was that like a studio leak to like hype it up? Like, oh, he's really going into the character. Because when I saw the character and it's like, why are we in a club scene? Oh, the Joker is in a dance club. Oh, okay.
Maybe he sent them a free copy of a 30 Seconds to Mars album and they're like, oh, what is it? It's disgusting.
I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? And then they showed him and he was just like, he was like a pimp. He was like a gangster pimp.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is this? Like,
he looked like a mid 2000s crunk rapper.
He did. Oh my God, that's funny. Yes.
And then he carried himself like, so it always reminds me of that Nirvana, Smells Like Nirvana from Weird Al, where he's like, all these marbles in my mouth, because that's like how he talked, because he was just like, Mark, I'll hurt you, all right, and it's like, can he not talk with those grills in? What I mean? You should have thought of this before you put all this shit in his mouth, because he literally can't talk. But then
they tried, they did so many things with that movie, and then they forgot to like write a story. So then they were like, hey, Skybeam, like they did so many things with the like comic book intro. Here is the flashback moment. I think the biggest issue they had in that movie, and they've done this now a couple times in DC especially, they tried to make all the bad guys be relatable. I don't have to like them. It's okay if this is a piece of shit with a gun to his head and you telling him, do what I tell you or I will blow your fucking skull open.
Right, totally.
It's okay to do that. Like there's nothing wrong
that's
with
one
that.
reason I liked that's one positive I'll give the Ledger interpretation, is that they actually let him be an evil son of a bitch and you don't know his motives. You know what I mean? Like he's
he was
very much
mysterious
in spirit the comic book Joker.
Yeah.
If not physicality, if not some other things are missing, but like in spirit, he's got like the manic, why is this guy doing what he does kind of thing to him,
And I think they also like shoved like 30 years of comic book lore into one movie, into like Joker and how he acted during that whole movie. Because by the end, when he's like, you complete me, like I can't live without you, or whatever the fuck he says right before he falls off the goddamn building, or he tries. How? You've been at this for like 2 weeks. Batman completes you in 2 weeks. Like, what? Granted, all right, fine, he's that crazy, but like it felt weird because I was like, I get why Joker said that in what was it, Batman R.I.P. or whatever the fuck it was, when when Batman died right before Final Crisis. I get why that happened. They were connected for, in our world 50 fucking years.
Yeah, that's one of the pluses. That's one of the pluses I'm looking forward to in the Matt Reeves Batman movie, is that it seems that there's a little bit of stuff already established, kind of like when you read The Long Halloween, it takes place in year 1 or 2 or whatever, but like there's still like all the major Gotham players and villains are like running around, because like that's my problem with some of these superhero movies, is that they're so obsessed with like having an origin for every freaking person, and it's like every new movie we have to see how the villain before he's the villain, and then maybe die at the end or go to jail. But like it's like, why don't they ever do it like the Dick Tracy movie? I'm not saying in terms of quality that was okay, but like where it's like all these guys are already there, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's like, we don't have to see where they came from. Maybe give it a little lip service or something. It doesn't have to be like this every time, because sometimes it is great to tell like a story of how a character became a character.
Sure.
But sometimes, especially in a rich world like Batman's, where most people know his rogues gallery, it's just like, just have them there and show me what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Like
Not like how, not how they became
Two-Face
to
walked
be.
into a room and flipped a coin, nobody would need an explanation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nobody
Like,
would really need a big in-depth explanation of how his face got scarred. Why is he flipping a coin?
right.
Or you can write it in such a way that even if you never fucking heard of Two-Face, which I don't really know how, but let's say you're somebody who has just never heard of fucking Batman and you don't know who Two-Face is. He walks in the room, he flips a coin, it slow-mo follows the coin. One side's crossed out, one side's clean. Context clues, like if it lands on the cross and he shoots the guy, you're like, all right, I know what the coin does. like it's not hard. The sales pitch is not hard for most of these characters. Like if Killer Croc walks in the room, you're like, I get it.
Yeah. Right. Totally.
I don't need the origin story.
That's what's kind of funny about Suicide Squad too, is like, and one of the most awful things about like trying to make Batman a killer, like Bruce was, or Ben Affleck was, his version, not, you know, his, but Snyder's, is that it's like, wait a minute, if Batman's a killer,
why are these people in prison?
Why are these people in prison? Yeah. It's like, these are the worst of the worst, and like they're all still alive. And then there's that one little scene in Suicide Squad. I only saw like half of it, but like, I love this scene. It shows Deadshot walking away with his daughter,
right?
And Batman shows up, and they're about to get in a scuffle, and then Batman's like, don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, he felt like the real Batman at that moment. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this is totally the opposite of what was in Batman v Superman, you know?
Yeah, like, that's the thing for me is I think Ben Affleck's Batman, I really like his portrayal on both sides. So like when he was Bruce Wayne in everything, except for the like hyper emotional stuff, I really liked his portrayal. I really liked his portrayal on both ends of it. And it's just some of the actions are questionable, but I think that's not so much as far as his choices as they are, you know, directorial choices. I think the best weirdly enough, the best representation of Batman in the DCEU is in Suicide Squad, because he shows up, he kicks ass, takes them to jail. That's the whole thing.
Without branding them.
Yeah. Without branding them. That was a weird choice, I thought.
I remember I was kind of like forced into seeing Justice League, not the Snyder cut. I haven't seen that yet, but like the Whedon cut, when it came out in theaters, I was kind of dragged into seeing that, and I was like, I walked out of it like kind of not mad. You know what I mean? Like
it wasn't bad. It wasn't the like horrible fucking mess that everyone says it was.
It's not good, but like it didn't offend me to my core as a fan of those characters.
Yeah, it's no Avengers.
It's a mess. The effects are terrible and all that stuff, but the characters in it, Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, felt like the ones I know. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. That was
except for the
plus for it, I guess.
Except for the mustache fucking monstrosity. And then like this. And that dude was so fucking bad. And then it like really like doubled down on the like differences is when Snyder came back to do the Snyder cut. He said, I would rather burn this film to the ground than use any of the footage that he made. So like all of those reshoots, that whole fucking kerfuffle regarding the mustache, none of it fucking mattered in the end, because in Snyder's vision, he didn't need those shots. I personally disagree, because that shot of Superman saving the kid and he's like, be a good person, and he flies off, that's a good Superman moment for me. That felt like the growth we wanted to see in Superman.
I even like that iPhone shot in the beginning.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, where he's talking to the kid and stuff. Yeah, okay, so that is so it's like, despite the fact that it's very obvious that his mustache isn't there and all that stuff, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of ruined what could have been an awesome moment.
Like it sold to me the idea that Snyder wanted us to have from the get-go. because he was like, this is what I'm doing. He's like, I want to have him go on this journey and essentially like become the Superman that we know. Like, obviously destroying countless millions of lives along the way, fighting other Kryptonians.
Right.
But like he, so like when I saw that at the beginning of Justice League, I was like, okay, all right, we are getting there. We're getting to like heroic, good guy Superman.
Right.
And then when he did the Snyder Cut, he's like, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
And honestly, very admittedly, his version of Superman in the Snyder Cut is much different. Much
Is
different.
that really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is a lot darker. The first time you are introduced to him is definitely when he comes back to life. So like the fight is the first time you see him. Not that like
can't imagine there's any glimpses of the John Williams score or anything like that. There was in the
you should watch it.
Joss one. All right.
You should watch it for the music. Dude, he was all up his ass about that music. Yeah. He like Batman watches Aquaman get into the water when he's like, fuck you, I'm not doing it. And he gets in the water and this like choir of women, like Icelandic women, just starts singing. I was like, the fuck is happening?
Oh my god, that was, I don't even know what's the word for that. Like the bombastic is not enough. Like what is the word for that? It's sometimes that's just Snyder's style where it's just
and then
like,
they bring bring that back. They bring that like chorus back like basically every time Aquaman's on screen.
Those girls show up too? Like wherever,
no, thankfully.
Wherever he gets out of the water, they're just standing there.
No, thankfully they don't. Oh my god, that would be better. That would have been funnier. No, he basically
choir of women following me everywhere.
Basically takes out all the humor. I mean, like Jason Momoa's life, though. Look, definitely, like the respect they gave Cyborg's character in the Snyder Cut. No,
I've heard that's better. I've heard
unquestionable. That's better. His entire arc makes that movie worth watching because it is in itself just so rewarding because like you get to see who this character is. He's not this like mysterious kind of moody cyborg guy. Like there's a lot more to him. There's a lot more to his relationship with his father grows and it becomes a whole different thing. Like it's just for that, for the little bit more Aquaman stuff, like you see a little more what's going on with Aquaman. I don't know. It's just like everybody's at first I was like, oh, okay, so these are just like longer intro sequences. That's like what this movie is. But then after about 25-30 minutes and I saw them kind of like start building, I was like, okay, like it's not just like longer intros for everybody and that's why it's 4 hours long. Right. Because that was my initial thought. After like 10 minutes I was like, okay, so we're going to spend 10 minutes on every intro. That'll get us to about 50 minutes. That's where we get the bulk of this extension. But like, once you see them start building on each other, you're like, okay, like this is actually like more cohesive storytelling as opposed to, but then again, where like real life filming conditions affect the story being told. We did not get Green Lantern, John Stewart Green Lantern, who was supposed to be in there, who is my favorite Green Lantern.
Yeah.
They didn't want him supposedly because they didn't want a black Green Lantern. There's no like confirmation on that. That is like the rumor, if you want to call it that. They didn't want to show a black Green Lantern, which I was like, the fuck, why not? You had like one on Justice League for like 10 fucking years.
Yeah, for a certain generation of people, he kind of like is Green Lantern, you know?
Yeah.
Like once they started bringing Hal back in the fold, it was kind of like people were like, "Who's this guy?" Like maybe the way older fanboys knew who he was a lot more.
Exactly.
They're like, "No, that's the real Green Lantern." But at this point,
and all the kids who got introduced to DC through the Justice League cartoon, he was the only Green Lantern.
Right.
There was no Kyle. There was no Hal. There was no fucking Guy Gardner. Like none of those people existed.
Right. So and like, it's night and day with him and Hal. Whereas like Wally West in that cartoon pretty much is Barry Allen. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah, Wally and Barry are, in my opinion, for the most part, interchangeable. I actually didn't realize that Wally was the main Flash in the Flash comic now because of that. Like it just kind of interchangeable. So now he's the main Flash in a Flash comic. So like, but we didn't get John Stewart. We got this like mediocre ass fucking Martian Manhunter cameo, and because of not getting to do that Green Lantern spot, which he filmed in his driveway, apparently, it was just like a bunch of green screens and shit, which like is even more insulting because it's like I would have just fucking snuck it in.
Yeah.
Was the fucking studio gonna watch 4.5 hours? No. If you snuck that in, they would like, what the fuck were they gonna do?
They should do Justice League Unlimited, the Snyder cut, and like have every character get 10 minutes of intros, and it's like we're all the way down to like Vigilante, and like, you know what I mean? That'd be like,
but like because of that,
hours.
he said part of that deal was that he got to film the Nightmare sequence, which is like that future thing. Which I don't know if you didn't see all of Batman.
I've heard of it. I've seen pieces. Yeah.
So like the Nightmare thing, and like you get a Joker that's much more Jokery. So I'll give him that, but it's still stupid.
Like Heath Ledger, Marilyn Manson, or something.
Yeah, he's much more Jokery, but that's about it. He looks much more like a normal Joker. He doesn't have all the tattoos and shit. But like, it's kind of a pointless scene because even he said he's not doing more shit. So like, you're setting up that in the future of this DCEU, Darkseid is taken over Earth, and you are the Resistance now. Okay, that's the Flash with the armor that went back to Batman v Superman. Okay, that's where that came from. But if you're not going to make any more fucking DC movies, why are you even showing me this?
Yeah, right.
Like, to me, that was more of an insult than anything else that he fucking changed. Anything else that he butchered, I was like, yeah, but all that at least makes sense within that story. This is just like, here's a massive cock tease. You're never gonna get that nut though. Like, that's how it felt. I was like, what the fuck? Like, how you like it's literally, I don't know if you watched it, but Wolverine and the X-Men, like, second.
I watched it. It was a good show.
The last scene of Wolverine and the X-Men, which set up season 2, which set up the motherfucking Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, that never came to
show.
fruition.
Got canceled.
Yeah, didn't they do something similar in Evolution? I can't remember.
No, Evolution finished.
Evolution finished. Okay,
they got all the way through Apocalypse and a whole shit that I haven't even watched yet. Like, I forget why, but at some point, like, I lost track and I was just like behind.
I remember when Wolverine and the X-Men came out, I was already against it because of like just the title alone. I was like tired of Wolverine being in a leadership position and him being like the main character and all this stuff after the movies. And then I actually watched it and I was like, oh, he's like desperately trying to get them all back together after Scott quit. Like, that's a neat place to start.
Yeah. It was a good
and they
setup.
Mostly respected the characters and it was well animated. And oh my God, that episode where like Nightcrawler is that followed him like on a ship and then into Genosha and stuff, that was marvelous. Like, that was great. But like,
that show is really, really fucking good.
It was a good show. I love Spectacular Spider-Man too.
Spectacular, I thought, was the best Spider-Man show because
easily.
That Venom saga, that dark, just the scene where he's struggling with the suit internally, where it like turns into Uncle Ben and turns into all these people. I thought that was better than any other, even the comic book version, the original animated series.
Cool. And that was
the best one.
That was like 60% taken from the comics. Some of the visuals are even the same, where like the original costume and the other costume are fighting him in his sleep or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really cool. That was awesome. And I think my one, like, what I thought was a misstep in that show was like making Black Cat's dad the burglar, you know, that shot Uncle Ben. I didn't really care for that. But
I forgot.
Every last other thing was awesome. Yeah, that was where I was like, come on, man. But like,
and that's the thing. Yeah, they can't. They as in like people who make these adaptations, like the filmmakers, the cartoon makers, they tend to have this incessant need to make shit connect. Like, I did not need the Sandman to be involved with Uncle Ben's murder, and like, it was handled okay. And if you didn't have Venom, and I would even say if you didn't have Green Goblin in that movie, that would have been a good movie,
right?
But like, it was this like interesting story. It's like Sandman is I've always felt like a complex enough villain where you can dive a little deeper. Like he's trying to save his kid. Like there's a lot of stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then like when you like sideline most of that and he literally disappears for like a third of the movie,
Right.
like to
Yeah.
like do the Green Goblin 2 and fucking Venom setup, like shitty ass Venom setup.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to bring it all back. So it was like I was talking about the Joker because I was going to kind of
Yes.
like relate that to the Spider-Man movies where it's like, because the newer Joker movie just forget it. It's just a Taxi Driver remake made by an idiot that what's this Todd Phillips, is that his name, the guy who did The Hangover and the Gigi Allen movie. And it's like
Oh, I didn't know that.
it's the fact that he made a movie about Gigi Allen says about everything you need to know, because like that's like it's like he's into shock but there's nothing behind it, you know
Right.
what I mean? It's like everybody knows Gigi Allen for throwing shit at people, but nobody can name any of his songs because he sucks, you know. It's like, give me 7 seconds or Minor Threat or whatever, like anything that's on my wall right now. But like Gigi Allen, and then that guy's like, oh, Gigi Allen's the punkest guy in the world, so I'm gonna make a documentary about him. And then it's like the same thing with Joker, where it's like he made this like shocking movie. He wanted to like shock America by making like a 70s style, because remember the 70s were a very dangerous time for film, you know what I mean? That's when like everything went from like the golden age of Hollywood was like slowly transitioning into like this grit, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes the grit was like really gritty. Like if you ever go back and watch Dirty Harry, like I was like, oh, that's where he got his name from. He's literally looks at people changing through their window like on tippy toes, you know what I mean? I'm like, and then there's like a bus load of kids about to be murdered and stuff. I'm like,
Yeah,
the
I
70s,
do remember the
70s,
Buffalo Kids. Yeah.
it's like 70s did not fuck around. And so it's like Taxi Driver and all that stuff. So it's like he wanted to shock America all over again because he thought they were trying to, you know, getting too soft with like all this political correct stuff. And it's like I half get where he's coming from, but the other half of me is like, dude, like you did that by cynically taking an IP and attaching it to your Tantrum project so that you could throw it at America and you knew that they were going to see it because it had that name attached. You know what I mean?
Right.
I almost give him credit for like trolling everybody like that. But at the same time, what he gave people was just like an empty, as a nothing burger. You know what I mean?
It was, here's the thing. For me, I liked it. And I feel like this was the same kind of description I gave it then. It was a terrible comic book movie, but it was a very good film. Like it was a very interesting film as far as like how it was presented. But like if you had named it Going Crazy, the Steve Miller story, I don't know if I've come up with a name. Like
nobody would have seen it.
And nobody would have seen it, but it would have won an Oscar and shit for fucking performance. Like, oh, this guy's like a clown and blah blah blah, and he's all the shit. Like they would have like literally, you could have kept everything except you got to take out some of the like references to Batman, which, dude, that is the one thing I genuinely can say. Like, you turn the corner, you literally turn the corner, and it's like they show, dude, it was like, so you know the movie that Bruce and his family goes to see is The Mark of Zorro, right? In the Joker, this shows the theater, and it's like this. I forget this. It was the second one, right? It was the second Zorro movie. I forget what it's called. And I was like, oh, okay, they're like giving us a little nudge, Zorro. We get it. But then you see the fucking Waynes walk down the alley because all the fucking commotion because of this dude being on TV.
Yeah.
So like they go into this alley to like get away from that commotion. So again, this incessant need to connect fucking origins. The Joker indirectly causes the death of the Waynes.
Right. It's so stupid.
Because
it's like, how old is Joaquin Phoenix? Like what, like 45 or something? So by the time Batman grows up 30 years from then, he's gonna, or 25 years from then, he's gonna fight
supposedly they're talking about doing a sequel.
An elderly, mentally ill man who like cannot even. The Joker is like supposed to be like cunning and brilliant and like a master chemist and stuff. It's like this guy can barely tie his shoes, you know? Like
yeah, no, Well, I think that the premise was, at least this is like the headcanon that a lot of people have walked away with, is that this is the Joker of the 80s, and like eventually he dies, his like influence fades, and when the Batman shows up, like somebody kind of takes up the mantle, and that was the headcanon that a lot of people kind of went with. But
Yeah, I've heard that.
but
But
the
do you
like
think
but the
but do you
real
think
fucking
Todd Phillips thinks that? You know what I
no,
mean?
probably not. I will give him though the real fucking slickness of it is because there was a big part of the movie is that he thought he was Wayne's illegitimate child.
Mhm.
And for the most part, it seems like it's not true, but there's still like enough doubt.
Yeah. I heard
And
that was like kind of unanswered or something.
yeah, there's like enough doubt where you're like, I mean, like maybe, but also maybe not. But when you find out that the title, because I think the title of the Zorro movie was in Spanish, or like the word, or whatever the second word was in Spanish. So when I looked it up, I like looked up what the movie was, and it was like, oh, it's when Zorro's kid takes over the mantle and he takes over his father's responsibilities. And I was like, that's
Oh,
slick. So you have Bruce Wayne coming out of like Bruce Wayne and his parents walking out of the movie where Zorro takes over his father's responsibilities, go down the alley where his parents are about to die and he has to take over his responsibilities. That's pretty slick. Like I thought that was like a pretty, that was honestly, that's the only thing I talk about. Like there's all these like little things, but that was the one thing.
mhm.
Like little shit like that's interesting is like he does a lot of the shit and accent, like he took a lot of cues from like the way was it Dahmer or no Gacy was the clown dude.
Mhm.
The way Gacy like they took the whole thing of like Gacy was a clown dude and he painted his face with points as opposed to like round edges.
Yeah.
And that was so like he does that. So that's part of the movie. Like they brought that into it. So they like brought all these kind of different elements. It's interesting, but again, it's interesting as a film. And from
Not
my
as an adaptation, right?
but not as a Joker movie. Like to me, a Joker movie, I expect somebody to get splashed in the face with a fucking squirt flour off someone's chest, and
Right.
that's acid, and it burns their face off. And like, there's more to it than just this guy is crazy, and it culminates in him like causing some sort of like free spirit revolution where people just disobey society or whatever. Like,
Right. What sucks is that like when Grant Morrison did Arkham Asylum, I'm not even a big Morrison fan. Some of the stuff I just don't like, but like when he did that, A Serious House on Serious Earth,
yeah,
it was like that, like what I was talking about before, like the pretension in comics, like how much should it lean into that? Let's say for argument's sake that it should go as far as it can. Wouldn't it benefit the IP better? Maybe I'm wrong because it made a lot of money, but like, wouldn't it benefit the IP better from a creative standpoint if they were able to make something on par in a film that was like Arkham Asylum for the Joker? Like, what if they made a comic accurate Joker in a art house movie? You know what I mean? And like really actually like said like here's where he really came from and all this stuff, all these unanswered questions we've had for years.
yeah,
This movie is going to show you,
yeah,
like whether it's canon or not, we're going to stick to it as close as possible. It's like they could have if somebody wasn't Todd Phillips, who doesn't give two damns about the character, like they could have made a comic accurate art house film about the Joker. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
That was like on par with the kind of high art comics you would see from somebody like Grant Morrison. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
100%.
so I don't know. So like the fact that it was just more than, it was just kind of like a cultural diversion that grabbed some headlines for 5 minutes and now everybody doesn't care about it. Like that kind of, I don't know, it did a disservice to maybe like what it could have been or something. I don't know.
Like
Um,
there was a big aspect of it was that, like you said, that kind of like you're too good for the medium kind of thing. Like
mhm,
they spoon fed the message, even though the message was pretty fucking clear. Like, in my opinion, there was not any confusion. Like, this guy was clearly mentally ill, but he was definitely also clearly mistreated by people. And
mhm,
like a lot of the shit that happened to him was beyond his own control. And a lot of the shit. Like, granted, some of the shit obviously like was him, but like then he sits down. I mean, I don't know if you intend to watch it, but like when he sits down in front of De Niro's character on his show, like at night, late night show, to like introduce himself to the world, he had built his whole persona to that moment. He had built himself to like walk in and be this charming guy and like, bah, 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 you know, he's the guy. And I was like, this is the Joker moment. This is where he's going to come on and he's going to like tap dance around these motherfuckers. And then he's going to fucking cause some chaos. That was what I was expecting. And then he sits there for 7 minutes, like explaining how he's had a fucking rough go at it. Yeah. And I was like, the whole point of this whole buildup was for you to not be that guy anymore.
Right.
And like, yeah, like it ends with like this like poignant yet bloody fucking joke. And I laughed my ass off, but it was one of those, like, in retrospect, like it was an unearned thing. Because like I wanted it to be this thing where he was going to tap dance around him and he's like, I was like, I'm funny as shit, like boom, boom, boom. Like I wanted him to have confidence, but he comes out and then he like shrinks back into himself, has this like speech about how shit's been hard, and then he like steps out and he's a little crazy.
I've seen that scene. I mean, at this point it's kind of iconic or whatever, I guess, but like, I always kind of contrast that with Batman the Animated Series, where Joker was the host of his own late night talk show by taking it over and having a bunch of people like cocking machine guns in the audience and forcing everybody to laugh at his jokes. You know what I mean? It's like, and he's got Batman in the electric chair. I'm like, that's the kind of like swagger you really need from this character. You know what I mean?
And that's what I was hoping. That's really what I was hoping when he stepped out onto that stage. That's who I was looking for.
Yeah.
And that's why and at that moment is where I knew like this had little to nothing to do with the comics and the comic book character.
Right.
This was just loosely like a loose adaptation.
Yeah. It's like I was talking about the Ang Lee Hulk movie. You know what I mean? It's like, it's technically proficient, well acted.
Very interesting. And it's very interesting how
proficient,
it was
well acted, and like
panels.
Even the Ang Lee Hulk movie, it's like, this is an amazing tale of a guy who is just like just holding it all in because of what his father did to him, and at the end he lets it all loose on him, metaphorically and physically, and like shoots it all back at him. You know what I mean? And I'm like I mean, I remember Roger Ebert praising the movie too, and I'm just like, he was telling comic book audiences won't even get this or whatever, and I'm just like, no, it's Roger, it's not that we didn't get it, it's just that maybe some didn't, but some of us, we have the capacity to understand high art, but we know when it doesn't need to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it wasn't. I mean, like to even. I mean, I personally wouldn't even call it like, it wasn't that high art. Like it wasn't.
I don't think Joker is, no. Like, just from what I've heard.
No, I don't either one. I don't think the Hulk was, and I don't think the Joker was. I think the Joker was a very it was a very pretentious way of presenting the idea of the Joker. Not even like presenting the character of the Joker, the idea of the Joker, like a guy who dresses resembling a clown and is crazy and kills people. Like that was like the sales pitch, and they're like, all right, so like we just got to build to that. We get that. That's like a Joker movie, cool. And then they just wrote this whole other thing that has nothing to do with anything, and then sprinkled in, oh, like he thinks he's a Wayne, like sprinkle on like little bullshit that like makes it comic booky.
You know what's funny is like every once in a while you'll see like articles or whatever, just people talking about like film buffs and stuff talking about like failed pitches, you know, that like never got off the ground.
Oh yeah.
And for like all these characters, and every once in a while you'll read one and you'll be like, oh god, like what were they thinking? I'm glad this didn't get made.
Right.
This is one of the ones that snuck through.
For sure. Because when I look at this and then I think back, this was like 2006, 7 or 8, right towards the end of Wizard magazine. They talked about that there was a pitch for a Flash movie. I think it was written, it was a Goyer was going to write it, which I was like, I was already in, because I was like, Goyer's already done cool stuff. I think he did Blade. Like at that point, like I knew him for Blade. But I think he had already, no, I think this was after Batman Begins. Because David Goyer wrote Batman Begins. And they're like, oh, David Goyer like made this thing. And it's going to be a generational movie about the Flash, showing like flashes through, like maybe not necessarily flashes through the generations, but like like there will be a handoff or something along those lines. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of like the whole thing of the Flash. The Flash is a generational story. Like his mentor is the original Flash. Like his nephew is the next Flash. His grandson is the third Flash. Like it's all very generational. It's all very like familial. So when it was like, oh, it's like a generational tale of the Flash, I was like, fuck yeah. They're like, they said no. I was like, the fuck? you understand the basic premise of this character? We don't want to do that.
Like, yeah, right. Exactly.
Because they were also going to do I think it was just going to be called Blackgate, and it was going to be Green Arrow going undercover at Blackgate to find out some information, and like basically he has to fight his way out. And I was like, that's super interesting, because then you can have all sorts of different villains and shit. I was like, that's just an interesting. I mean, it's like what the fuck was that movie? They made two of them. The fucking like massive kung fu fight in prison.
Oh yeah. I can't think of it. I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah, but like I was like, when that came out, I was like, they could have done this with Green Arrow and supervillains and shit. I was like, why didn't they do this? Like,
right.
Like, this would have been awesome.
That would have been cool. But yeah, like, I guess just tying back to the Spider-Man thing, might as well finally talk about this.
Yeah, right. Eventually.
So like, I was kind of going through the Joker list to be like, they keep almost getting it right, sometimes horribly wrong, but keep like missing pieces, and that like just annoys me as somebody who really would like to see these characters come to life. You know what I mean? Like the ones I actually know and watching cartoons and reading comics. I would love Hollywood to just get over themselves and make something that is true to something. You know what I mean? Like every once in a while, like quality of adaptation sneaks through the cracks, like Deadpool. You know what I mean? When you watch Deadpool, like you could show somebody, you could show a friend who doesn't know who Deadpool is, and like you could show them this, and like you might say one or two little things like, oh, actually the healing factor came from Wolverine, or like some bullshit like that. But in a general sense, the costume, the personality, everything was like straight out of the books. You know what I mean? So it's like they get, and same thing with the Chris Reeve Superman movie, the original, not anything after that. But like, if you show them that movie, if somebody's never heard of the character, which is unlikely for Superman, but like they now understand what that character is, the basics of them. It doesn't have to be like 1,000% like it or whatever, but now they know. You know what I mean? Like,
you get the general gist, and like you get the feel of that character. That if I was to give you the episode of Spider-Man Unlimited where Deadpool showed up, and why he, like, you'd get why he gets annoyed that he can't say kill.
Right. Yeah.
You'd get that. You would understand it because you know the personality at that point. If you get a comic book from really any age, there's some like weird, like Rob Liefeld / Deadpool like diehards that say that Deadpool was like ruined when he started talking like to the audience and fourth wall breaking. But I was like, if you go all the way back to like the first appearance, in his first fight, he makes pop culture references and shit during the fight. I'm like, this isn't new. There's none of this shit is new. So like, it wasn't as flamboyant back then. It wasn't quite as big, but it's just like, that's just, we got more of him. And so we learned more about him. Like it wasn't a stretch.
I've been a Deadpool fan since the 90s. And I watched him go from the, Joe Mad miniseries into the Joe Kelly series, into Gal Simone and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So like, I know the character, and it's like, I could show somebody that movie and they got out of it exactly what I got out of those comics. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
And that's very rare. That is 100% very rare. I agree with you. I think
on a whole, the MCU does that. Individually, you can pick it apart and be like, but on the whole, that feels like a Marvel universe. So that's at least cool. But I
actually think the shows have done a much better job individually than the movies, because the movies are time limited and things like that. But I also I still think the first Iron Man movie is 100% like, it's still in my top 5. Like, because I think that movie can stand on its own, and I think none of the other ones can.
Right, I gotcha. And I I love WandaVision. That was great. That's my favorite out of the three
Dude,
shows
that
so
was
far.
so good. I was
Yeah,
geeked because like I grew
especially
up
like
like when I came to this country, we
TV
kind of like
junkies. You know.
exactly like I came to this country like my mom worked, I fucking watched TV. So like
Mhm.
I know all that shit. So like when they were doing the different years, I was like, I think I know what show that is. Like I
Yeah,
know what
and
that show
they
like
like got the style of humor and the dialect down
yeah,
from each era, and it
yeah.
was the
They did
attention to
a
detail was crazy. Like by the time they got to like the Malcolm in the Middle stuff, it was like some goofy thing would happen while they were playing like this dumb little ska music or something, you know, like
yeah,
stock ska music or
yeah,
something, and you're like, that's exactly what late '90s and early 2000s TV shows were like.
yeah.
So they got all that stuff right, and okay, so back to the Spider-Man thing. So like the Joker stuff, like I said, they keep almost getting it right or keep missing pieces. Sometimes big pieces, sometimes little pieces, but it's just not quite at that Deadpool Christopher Reeve Superman level.
Right.
And that's my problem with the Spider-Man movies is that like I know and it's probably my fault that I am such a canon snob about the character and know him so well and like that he is my favorite character. So sometimes if I care less about a character, I don't care. Sometimes I I try not to like overlook the changes because I'm all about fidelity and all that stuff.
Right.
But it's hard not to notice as somebody who's like a major Spider-Man fan. So like when the Raimi movies, I'll just go through trilogies. So when the Raimi movies first came out, it was 2002. I followed that like a hawk. I was on spidermanhype.com, which turned into superherohype.com,
That's true. I forgot
looking
that
at
started that way.
I was looking at those articles every day, looking at the set picture of the Green Goblin, this and that. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. I'm like, oh, they went no black leather. They're doing Spider-Man's real costume. That's so fucking cool looking. All this stuff. I'm like, look at Mary Jane, look at Peter. Oh, they look great. They look just like they should or whatever. And then I saw the movie and then it felt like it zipped by. You know what I mean?
Right.
I I convinced myself for a long time that I loved it, but there was something in the back of my head that was gnawing at me that was like, this guy is not funny. Spider-Man's supposed to be funny, and this guy is not funny. And then like I didn't care too much about like the mechanical web shooters, even though I love them way more than organic. And then like I was like, I don't know, somebody like John Byrne or one of those creators was writing about the movies, and they were like, yeah, but it takes away a major piece of his character, the fact that he is an inventor and he is a
Right.
genius and all this stuff. Whereas they only pay lip service to the fact that like Peter's good at science. Like Harry tells his dad that. And then in a deleted scene in Spider-Man 2, he predicts Otto's experiment going wrong, but they deleted it.
Right.
So it's like that's the closest they ever got to showing that this kid's a genius in his own level, like a poor Tony Stark, you know?
Yeah.
Not to get into the whole MCU Tony Stark thing, but like, so there was just something off about Tobey Maguire. There was something off about Kirsten Dunst. Willem Dafoe was great as Green Goblin. What's his name was actually decent as Harry, stoner guy, you know, James Franco.
Yeah. I couldn't think of his name either.
Obviously, J. Jonah Jameson murdered it. Like,
Oh my
looks
god.
exactly
I'm
and
so
sounds
glad they
exactly
brought him
like,
back. I'm so
yeah,
glad they brought him back.
yeah. Oh, totally. So it's like he walked out of the pages, you know what I mean? And like there were like little aspects of the unit. It looked like a Spider-Man movie should,
Yeah.
for the most part. But then like Sam Raimi kind of got in the way. And it's like Sam Raimi, and I love the guy. As much as I perceive screwed up my favorite character, I still love him. I still love Evil Dead. I still love everything he does. And he's like really into the Three Stooges, and he's really into like people being the butt of jokes and stuff like that and getting smacked around like Ash does and everything. And that's what he did to Peter Parker in and his big inspiration for those movies was like the Reeves Superman movies. And sometimes it's like, but that's not who Peter Parker is. And like, it's like Peter, you know, has like a bad life, like occasionally, like he goes
Right.
through horrible things and like growing pains kind of things.
The Parker luck.
Yeah, exactly. But like it was just very melodramatic and it was very like goofy at the same time. So it was like
Yeah.
Peter is a wise ass in the comics in and out of costume. So when people parrot that whole Toby was a good Peter but not a good Spider-Man thing that you see all over the internet, it's kind of
Right.
like I don't think he was good as both, because I think like uh he this is not somebody you could picture mouthing off to Flash Thompson. You know what I mean? This is not somebody you can picture saying, you know, like,
or
hey, where's
or
your
even just standing up to him,
yeah,
even to take an ass whooping, like it just wouldn't. Yeah,
right.
no, he wasn't
And
that guy.
like,
And he honestly, I always thought he looked too old. I was like, this dude's 35. What are you
yeah, definitely
doing?
that. And like he was too timid in his voice. Like everything came out like a whisper or like an awkward something or other. Like
Yeah,
when he's talking to Mary Jane, he like freezes in front of her and he's just like, I I think I like you. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And I'm like, no, man, Peter Parker in the comics is like, he's a he's a nerd, but he's got like a something like a mysterious side to him that women
yeah,
find attractive because
yeah.
Liz was attracted to him.
Liz was, I mean,
Betty,
dude, Liz, Betty,
yeah,
Gwen, and
exactly.
MJ, they all wanted him.
They all and then like it's like they did the whole like this story is about a girl. He says that in the first moment of the movie, and it's just like, um, but Spider-Man was never like that. He was like, what was cool about Stan Lee's run is he actually like went through like becoming like a kid into an adult and like going through all the pains that go with that. So it was like he was broken up about Betty when they stopped seeing each other, but then like he sees Betty with Ned Leeds and he's like, oh, to think I thought the world of her. Now I really don't care. You know what I mean?
Right,
And I'm like, that's right, because that's kind of what you do as a young man. Like you like think like, oh, why was I so broken up about this? Like suddenly it doesn't matter to me. Like
right.
I moved on. And so it's like Peter Parker never grew or moved on in those movies. He was just like this quiet, shy weirdo obsessed
And
with
he was,
Mary
yeah, and
Jane.
he was love struck the entire time. I
Hmm
100%. I feel you on that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I, I,
he was pining for Mary Jane when in the comics most women pine for him, and he is too arrogant and in his own head to notice. You know what I mean?
right,
He's usually like, you know, like, and this is another thing that Stanley got right in those early comics is that like when you're like a geeky kid or whatever and you start to grow up a little, sometimes when people are being nice to you, you almost kind of respond in like a knee jerky way because you think they're still mocking you or something. You
right,
know what I mean? Like I don't know. I was pretty nerdy growing up, but also not. I was kind of like never picked last in sports, never picked first. I was picked somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean?
right,
It's like, oh, JT can hit a home run. We know he can. So it's like, but he's not like the best athlete in class either. So it's like, but I was still geeky enough to like know that like you get to a certain point where when women start paying attention to you, girls, I guess, well, like, um, and like new friends that you didn't think were like on your level or whatever, or like too
right,
cool for you, like start paying attention to you, you almost kind of write them off. And that's what Peter did to like the college crowd when he got to college, is that like Flash and Gwen and all them were like, hey, you want to hang out with us this weekend? And he's like, look at them, they're mocking me again. Yeah, no, I wouldn't be caught dead doing that. And then he'd walk away and they'd be like, what's Parker's problem? What a fucking asshole. You know
right.
what I mean? And it's because and then he slowly just kind of grew out of that. And like, so it's like there was kind of an arrogance to him where it's like Gwen really actually tried to have a crush on him and he thought she was joking, or he thought she was being a snob. And
Right.
then like she followed him to a science exhibit and the two of them hit it off. So it's like, I don't know, I'm over explaining, but like, um, I just don't see that in Tobey Maguire. I don't see him growing from a young man into a
Right.
older man or whatever. Like he's kind of in this like arrested puppy dog stage of
Yeah.
adolescence,
And
and
I think
he's
that's what
not witty.
that's why when he got the Venom suit, I think that's why it didn't just like amplify his aggressiveness. It
Hmm
amplified these kind of like weird qualities. So like this thing that he felt in the like that character, that Spider-Man felt he was missing, the like the suaveness with women and the like forwardness.
Right.
He like that is what got amplified because like the suit gave him what he didn't have as opposed to like amplifying who he was.
hmm
So
So it's
like
like, yeah, Sam Raimi like through all three movies, and even in that one, like was just like he's even said like you know, like look at this dopey kid or whatever. You know what I mean? So
right,
it's like he set up this like little puppy dog, everybody root for him kind of character. And then you did for three movies, even though he like hit Mary Jane in the third one. Like, what the fuck was with that? Like, so it's just like everybody's supposed to like follow this little dweeb on his journey, and it's just like I don't know. It's just, there's something so off about it. And like the second one, just like Ang Lee's Hulk, very well directed movie, like artfully so. Like Spider-Man 2 it's kind of my problem with American Beauty also, is that like Sam Mendes like made this amazing visual treat, perfectly paced, perfectly emotional, hits all the right notes, all that stuff that is based off the worst script ever. You know what I mean? Like
Wow,
I'm
really?
overplaying it on Spider-Man 2 when I say worst script ever, but I just mean a bad script. Like I mean,
Wow,
first of
that's
all,
funny.
some
Like most everyone says that is still their favorite Spider-Man movie.
I know, but sometimes I think they're just saying that just because that the critics did back then, and there wasn't a lot going on
I
back
I
then.
am I am like I am a Alfred Molina fan to like a weird degree. Like
Hmm.
I was exposed to him when I watched Frida, and like not on purpose. Like my girlfriend at the time went to go see it for like a project for school, and she's like, "Do you want to come see this movie?" I was like, "I don't know who any of these people are. I've
Hmm.
never heard of this person, Frida. Sure, fuck it. I'll go see it. You're my girlfriend. I'll hang out with you for a couple hours." Fell in love with that movie. I thought he was a fantastic actor. So when they were
Hmm.
like, "He's doing Spider-Man," I was like, "Fuck yes."
Hmm. And he's great in it, and the arm effects are phenomenal in it, like
Especially for fucking
amazing.
2004.
Oh, for sure. Like when he's like climbing up a building or something, like you feel that, you know what I mean? It's really well done. It's just not Spider-Man, and it's kind of, I don't know, kind of dumb. Like uh what's his Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, and what I really mean is Sam Raimi and Alvin Sargent's Doc Ock is not the comic book Doc Ock.
No.
Like a lot of people are stoked to see him in the new movie again, and I might be, like, if they do something different with it, because who knows, those might be variants. They might not be the real guys, but they're
Dude,
probably
I'm
are the real
so
guys.
excited for this new movie.
I don't know, but it's like he's like a nice guy who has a wife, and like is like handing down fatherly life lessons. It's like what you said earlier about like sometimes just give me a villain that's evil, you know what I mean? And that's one of the biggest failings of the Raimi trilogy, is that they make the villains too sympathetic,
Yeah.
Green Goblin is, I mean, he's kind of a mess in the comics, like, so it's hard to tell with like the whole, oh, I have amnesia, now I don't, now I'm multiple personality, now
Yeah,
I'm
but
not.
even Osborn
But
at the end, at the end of the first one, he gets stabbed and he's like, "Don't tell Harry," which is like a sympathetic moment of like, don't ruin his life by telling him this terrible thing about his father.
mhm,
Like, so it's like this whole thing. And then when Harry becomes the Green Goblin in the third one, he's a piece of shit. But you find out that it's because like he is sad that his dad died. Like
right.
that's the whole premise. And it's like everyone gets this sympathetic thing, except I felt Venom in the third one was such a shitty character development because he had so little screen time and it was all just jammed together. He was so shitty as far as development that I didn't give a shit about him.
Yeah.
I thought he like I was like, you deserve to get fucking eaten by some alien goop, you motherfucker. Like you're
Right.
just sitting there bitching and whining. Like, I hate you already.
Yeah. He's kind of the only actual villain of the whole saga, and like he's not even that good.
No, exactly.
But like,
And the first thing he does is goes and gets a team up. Doesn't even try to take on Spider-Man by himself.
right. One of the dumber things they did in Spider-Man 2 was like uh because they were so obsessed with this like whole father figure thing for Peter, like every villain has to be a fucking father figure. Like he like gets influenced by the AI of the arms, and they're talking to him. And it's like, as cool as that scene is, like with just the way, like, I mean, even the special effects are just like, and,
Right.
like you see them like barely move, and it's just like
Right.
that's a cool effect. But from a character standpoint, especially as somebody who loves the egomaniacal, psychotic Otto Octavius of the comic books, love the Superior Spider-Man saga, by the way.
Outstanding.
It's like he was just like, he was influenced by these arms that were meant to control the fusion reactor, and it's like he gave him enough AI. Why wouldn't you give him enough AI just to do that? Like, you also gave them like these weird, like obsessive, like uh like, why, like they were obsessed with completing the experiment, and
Right.
had enough intelligence to like be able to have their own morality gauge too and become evil. And
Right.
control him.
But
it was just so weird.
wasn't it? And I might be misremembering this, but wasn't that like the arms influencing Otto? Wasn't that a part of the animated series, at least for a while?
Was it? I don't remember. It's been a long time
I
since I've
felt
seen the
like I
90s.
remembered something like that, where like he was like fine, and then like the arms kind of like attached themselves to him, and like that's kind of like what drove him crazy, was the arms being attached to him. And I felt like that
Oh,
I
I don't know. It's been
I
a
might
long
be
time.
misremembering that, like, so, but like no, it was a weird. You bring up a very interesting point though about the father figure thing, because I think everyone, and we saw this definitely in even the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Everyone, the directors and the writers of these movies, they get hung up on this like Uncle Ben, or in the MCU Iron Man, like this like need to have Peter like live up to the legacy of this father figure, and in some ways find a substitute.
Hmm.
Like even in Far From Home, uh it was Mysterio.
Right.
So like he
Yeah,
like
that's weird. That's
needed
weird that
someone to like validate him.
you're right. They do keep doing that. And it's funny because in the comic books, he doesn't need a father figure. Like he's really trying to figure out life on his own, you know?
Yeah. And
Like he is a
all
very alone
which
person.
which I think is why, oh my god, like I've never like verbalized this with someone, so I'm just like flowing right now. But I think that's why when you do get those moments where Uncle Ben shows up, variant timeline. I think during Spider-Geddon, he shows up at some point for a second. Like somebody at some point, like some divine being is like, "Here, you get 10 seconds." So like you get these moments where he gets a hug, he gets a couple encouraging words, and they feel so good
Hmm.
because he's been doing it on his own for years.
Right.
Just to get that, good job, buddy. Like
Yeah.
fuck yeah, that feels good.
Yeah, right.
Which is but I also think that's why during the, or right after rather, the other story leading up to Civil War, which is its own mess, like when he kind of like latched onto Tony and like made the bad decision of revealing his identity, uh like that was, I think that came out of that. I think that was like, I just went through this truly traumatic thing, like literally fucking came out of a cocoon, I've got all these new powers and shit.
Oh, I hated that story.
Like all this shit fucking happened, but that was all like the build up from JMS, which is ironically like they've built it all into like the new mythos now.
Yeah.
And I think, is it Ben? No, not Ben. Ben's not the other. Kane is the other currently. So like
Oh, okay.
there has to be an other in every universe. So it's just been a very interesting thing. So like, but like he went through this like truly traumatic thing, so he needed that good job, buddy. And Tony was like, hey, here's a new fucking armor. I'm gonna take
Right.
care of you. You come live in my tower. I'm gonna protect your family. Like, here, let me take this fucking weight off your shoulders for a fucking minute.
Yeah.
Here's some backup. Here's protection. And that felt good. So I think
Right.
that's why he was like, yeah, let's go to Washington, D.C. Tell them who I am. All right. I mean, I think you know what you're doing, but tell them who I am. Like, they just
Right.
kind of like, he fell in line right at the onset of Civil War, because of that like need for this parental guidance. But that doesn't happen very often throughout the comics. He doesn't
Right.
have these attachments. He's usually really on his own. And even more recently, like from brand new day, and like 3 times fucking since, every new writer says reset button. Peter now is hard up for money, lives with a roommate, is
Mhm.
having troubles dating. Everybody wants to write that Spider-Man, and it's getting really annoying.
Right. I don't mind it too much because like I wrestle with that. That's something I wrestle with. Another thing is like another dichotomous storytelling thing when it comes to like serialized superhero comics, especially ones that have been around for 60 years now. Like,
Yeah.
like do you keep the status quo or do you make them grow? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's been a fan debate for as long as I've been reading comics. And sometimes the answer is I don't care. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like sometimes the answer
sure.
is I just like Spider-Man and I just like reading his stories.
Yeah.
Like part of me, like if he that's why the marriage thing doesn't bug me. if he gets married to Mary Jane and they end up having a kid or something, I'll be like, all right, cool. I guess he's technically been progressing since the 60s. And if they reset him to like the 80s kind of Spider-Man status quo, like everybody wants to, I'm like, you know what? That's cool because I love classic Spider-Man. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm kind of like a either or.
Yeah,
Either way.
you are what I would say is a true fan of that character. You
Yeah,
just want a good Spider-Man story.
exactly.
The framing is not necessarily important to you.
Mhm.
And I 100% get that. Like that's kind of what I am with X-Men. Like X-Men for me is that's my shit. I've got a whole ass 2 shelves up here with X trades. Like X-Men for me, like I've read it everything. I mean, like from Onslaught to Zero Tolerance to we don't have jack shit to
Mhm.
when to the whole Morrison era when they had all of the shit in black leather and fucking they went public and now there's hundreds of students in the school, like all of the eras. And even now, which I think has been like the most biggest shakeup in the current X books with Hickman and his whole plan, I have loved it even more. So like for me, everyone that like says, oh, this, that, or the other thing about the X-Men, like there's a whole, like the way you feel about JMS, there's a whole fucking audience of people that feel the same way about Chuck Austin's X-Men run from like 2004.
I read that. I feel that way about Morrison's era,
I
actually. But
liked
like,
Austin's run. There was some weird shit for sure.
it was very uneven, but like there was some
Like
stuff
the
I liked
whole
in it.
Angel hooking up with at that time possibly
Husk.
16-year-old Husk.
Yeah.
Kind of like weird, possibly underage stuff.
Yeah, that was
Strange,
odd.
but
And
yeah.
Austin was kind of a horny writer. He really was. But
There was a
like,
lot of sex. There was for sure a
oh
lot of
God, that
that's
oh
what we
wasn't he the one that did that whole
ecstasy.
wasn't he the one that did the whole Juggernaut She-Hulk thing?
Yeah.
That like
I love
She-Hulk
that
like
scene. But I love that scene.
outright retconned later. Like she was like,
She
yeah, I
finally
didn't do that.
she finally
Oh, did
admitted
she
to it.
admit?
She finally admitted to it. I thought it was funny as hell. But that's like that's like serialized writing, like you said. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's that shit feels so good. Like, oh,
Mhm.
it's been 4 years, and She-Hulk's like, nah, Juggernaut, you're crazy. Nah, never would happen. And then eventually she's drunk, drinking with someone, like, yeah, it happened. like it felt good. Like you're like, it's like it was a bad decision I made one night in Canada. All right, like, like you know,
That's
it's
funny.
like,
Hey, we all have regrettable
I'm
situations.
saying. So like for me, it really doesn't matter. Like the art, I've seen the fucking gamut of art. Like the art doesn't matter. The quality necessarily of the writing. I'll get salty when they do dumb shit. Like
I liked the Azazel.
I
I
love
forget
that
how you say his
story.
name.
I
Yeah,
love
that
that
was a
story.
great story.
People
It
fucking
was.
hate that story. People
I liked it.
hate that story.
I
I just today was thinking about the fact that they peed to give Iceman the ability to build a body again. They Iceman is made of piss currently.
the logistic, because like Iceman always used to like make the ice over himself, like then suddenly
it was
he
his secondary mutation. Remember
okay, that's right.
that was the
Yeah,
Morrison thing. That's why Emma can turn into diamonds and shit.
right.
And for like a hot second, Charles had telekinesis.
The last like X-Men story I read that was so good that I actually just quit X-Men, like because I've been an on and off X-Men fan for years. My cousin Kevin's a little closer to it, and my friend Ken. They both like kind of catch up when they can. I have always been like X-Men was that thing I liked as a kid, but I have kind of not grown out of. That sounds pretentious. What I mean is, grown away from.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like I sometimes I hate it when people say grown out of, like, because that makes it sound like you're
Like it's for
insulting
kids.
somebody who still likes it. You know what I mean?
And like it's for
But
kids, and like it's not.
but I personally have become less interested in X-Men, not for any like tangible reason, just because I don't know. But like the last thing I read was the Psylocke miniseries written by Christopher Yost in the late 2000s.
Yeah.
Greatest thing I'd ever read, because I'm such a Psylocke fan, and I love like the Revanche Girl and like Matsuo and all that stuff. That brought all that to such an amazing conclusion, the Matsuo saga, that I was like, that's the greatest X-Men thing I'm ever going to read. I think I can quit now.
Oh, dude.
So
do you know like all the
shit.
shakeups with that? Like that's been such an interesting fucking journey recently.
Yeah, I've heard things and I've seen things, but for some like for me, that's kind of where, for me personally, with that character, that's where it ended. Because it was such a cool story. If you've never read the Psylocke miniseries, it goes for a lot these days. Like, I don't know why, but maybe there was a little print run or something. But
That was that era. X books in general, it was very popular. That's when they did some of the big important crossovers, and that just kind of like got bundled in. Like
right.
Yost X Force from that era is really popular.
I love Yost. He's an underrated writer. He's one of those people who just truly gets it, and like he's done a lot of I think he's done some video game writing, but I know he's done like a lot of animated writing too. He might have even written some of Wolverine the X-Men. Don't quote me on that, but I know he's written cartoons and stuff. And like,
actually, I think you might be right. There's
yeah.
a guy I follow. There's a guy who I hired a long time ago to like, I have a design firm, and like we had a client who needed some art done. I hired an artist that I just like found on DeviantArt, and like later on I just like started following his art page, and he is a huge X-Men fan, was a huge Wolverine the X-Men fan, and I think he did right on that show because he shared the script for season 2, like the first episode. There's the full script of the first episode of season 2 exists, and when I realized that exists, I got even more mad because I really wanted that season 2.
Yeah, I wanted season 3 is spectacular. They set up Scorpion, they set up Hobgoblin, they set up
so many things. Scorpion, like that whole like that series was really well done. And what sucks is you it's not on Disney Plus right now because it was like a Sony production specifically. So I think Sony still fucking owns that shit.
I have the Blu-rays, so at least that's cool. But yeah, no. Let's see. So swinging back to Spider-Man, I guess. Swinging back.
What did you? That's good. What did you think of the Amazing Spider-Man going into?
When I first saw it, first of all, I was geeking out. So many people were angry that there wasn't going to be a Spider-Man 4, but at that point, I was already kind of over the Raimi thing. Like, it had been a slow descent into, you know what, I think I just don't like these.
Dude, right after they came out,
I think it's time to admit it to myself. I like things about them, and I will always cherish the times that I enjoyed them to the degree I did back then. But like, it'll never be a Spider-Man comic to me. Like, any random Spider-Man comic to me is better than any Spider-Man movie. But when Amazing Spider-Man was announced, I was like, I don't know about this, but I'm happy to see that we might take it in a new direction. And then I saw a still of Andrew Garfield in the suit, and I'm like, the suit looks okay, it's close enough. And then I looked closer and I saw the little knobs on his wrists, and I was like, oh my god, he's got web shooters. Oh my god, he's got web shooters. You know what I mean? I'm like,
he's got web shooters.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
pretty hyped.
Yeah, I was so happy. And then like, then I didn't know where it was going to go with when they started doing the whole untold story thing with his parents. I'm like, I've read that annual. And then I'm like, I don't know if that's like what you should really make a whole movie on, but I guess they didn't touch on it in the old one. So, but they handled it pretty well for like a company that didn't own the rights to Red Skull or any of that,
Right.
So it's like they borrowed little bits of elements from Ultimate Spider-Man, but mostly took from 616, where it was like, he found the briefcase in the basement of Aunt May's house, and then he asked her about it, and he's like, what's the deal with this? And then she told, like, I have a terrible secret about your parents and all this stuff. So like, they were like, had gone down as like traitors or whatever, and like so they kind of tied that into Oscorp. And then, just like in any Spider-Man animated series, Oscorp or some such is always kind of like at the center of a lot of where villains get made and stuff like that. So it's like in a condensed universe kind of thing.
Right.
It's okay.
I wasn't mad about it when I saw the extra, like you saw the arms and you saw the wings, vulture wings and all that shit. Like I was cool with that.
Yeah. So like, even though once again Andrew Garfield was too old to be playing him, just like Toby was, it was like I got the sense from his character, and it's not perfect. It's like, to me, like 78%, but it's closer than Toby, closer to the Peter Parker I knew and loved, especially from the really old comics, where it was like he was a bit of a jerk. He would mouth off,
but he had a little swagger about him. He was not uncool.
Right. And he would mouth off he was more like he was originally, where it's not like, like, oh, look at the dweeb. It was more like he was an outcast, and like people didn't get him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, And yeah, they added the skateboard or whatever, but who cares? Like, it didn't really bug me that much. Some people were like, "Oh, like he's too skater boyish or something." I'm like, whatever. If Steve Ditko's Peter Parker was alive today, he might be a skateboarder. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, that didn't bug me too much. But like, he just reminded me a lot more of the angry loner Peter Parker from the early days. You know what I
Right.
mean? And like, even like they even gave Flash Thompson an arc, which they didn't do. Like, he just like got in a tiny fist fight with him in the Raimi movies, but like, uh in the web movies, like, or just the first one, he was cut out of the second one. What wasn't cut out of the second one? But like, um he actually was like a jerk in the beginning, and then like Peter humiliated him with the basketball thing, and then after Uncle Ben died, he came up to him and he just tried to talk to him, and then Peter like grabbed him and shoved him against the locker, and like he was like, "Dude, I get it, you know what I mean? Like, your uncle died, and you could tell that Flash Thompson is hiding some pain too, you know what I mean?" And he's trying to connect with Peter after
Right.
feeling bad for bullying him, and then Peter, who has these newfound powers and is in a fit of rage and stuck in his own head, lashes out at him, and I'm like,
Right.
that's what the old Spider-Man would do. That's what
Right.
the old Peter Parker would do.
Yeah.
And like, he had the quips in a couple of scenes, never as much as I want though. Like,
No.
I want the full on talky
In the
Spider-Man from
second
like,
one, he was. In the second one, he was a lot more talkative.
he was a little better in that one. And so was the costume. The costume was, that's probably my favorite live action Spider-Man costume.
It was basically one for one.
Yeah, it was pretty close. And
Yeah,
like,
I don't think I remember anything wrong with it.
right, like the logo on the back was like the stretchier spider. I like
Oh
the
yeah,
second
that's
one,
true.
but
That's true.
overall, yeah. And the lizard was a cool villain. Unfortunately, he was kind of straight out of the comics, where he wanted to turn everybody into the superior reptile race and all that stuff. uh
But
my biggest problem was that
my
like,
problem?
they gave him like the father figure arc and like the mentor arc, which is actually what the lizard is supposed to be in the comics.
Right.
They kept doing Dr. Connors with other characters in the Raimi movies, with Doc Ock, a little bit with Norman Osborn, so that by the time you get to this lizard guy, you're like, oh well, this is just like all the others. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately it is, but it's
That's
also
right.
supposed to be that way in the comics.
I like that's actually one of my favorite relationships from the comics that he has, because it is like, it's this guy who he wants to look up to, but it's this guy that really needs Peter a lot more than Peter needs him.
Mm-hmm.
So like, he's constantly coming to save this guy, constantly like redeeming him in the eyes of his child and his wife. Like,
That was a
it's a
big
very,
problem, that they cut the family out of the movie. I think they were
yeah.
supposed to be in it. I
It's
think there was even like a little skateboard like on Dr. Connors's like table in like one of the scenes, and like Billy Connors is a skateboarder. So
oh yeah, yeah.
maybe he would have talked to Peter about skateboarding or something. I don't know.
It's
But like, but
it's
yeah, the lizard needs the family to humanize him, you know?
yeah, because otherwise he's just a crazy scientist guy.
Right.
Crazy
But yeah,
scientist guy who wants to do crazy science. Like, that's pretty basic.
right. And obviously the chemistry between Andrew and Emma is like 500 times better than the whiny piney between
Right. Yeah, for
Toby
sure.
and Kirsten.
For sure.
So that's a decent-ish Spider-Man adaptation. But yeah, like you said way early on, it is a little bit dark. I felt like
Like, the black eyes really kind of put me off. And there's the scene where even that scene where it's kind of innocuous, where he like catches that guy in the alley, like trying to rob that car. It felt darker than it should have.
yeah.
Like, that scene felt like he might kill this dude. Like,
Right.
like, he's not going to, but it kind of like, it was a weird vibe.
Yeah, it was. As funny as some of his quips were in that scene, it was just, yeah, there was something about it that was a little too. And then I think in the second movie, they overcompensated in the other direction. You can tell that the studio was just shitting all over the second movie. Like, there's something good buried in there. I actually like watching that movie. I think it's okay.
Dude, I just watched a fucking deleted scene that was supposed to be a deleted final scene
with his dad.
I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
I know, right?
That's the payoff of both movies. Like,
it would have like broke canon or whatever, but it's kind of cool. You know what I mean? So but like, yeah, no, it's true. And he even gives them the great power responsibility line. But
Yeah.
uh the second movie, there was too much interference. Max Dillon was a little too goofy. Dr. Kafka was like a guy, and like he was a goofy German guy that looked like he was supposed to be in the Raimi movies or something. I'm like,
Holy
where did this
shit.
come
I
from?
forgot he was it. I
Yeah,
forgot
like
that character was in that.
as a comic fan, like Dr. Kafka is that's like J.M.
Wait, hold on.
DeMatteis's.
Where was the woke crowd? Why didn't they lose their mind
I know,
over
right?
a female character being a female person of color?
I lost my mind over it.
Oh my goodness.
Is
They
Kafka of
whitewashed.
color? Is she
Yeah.
Asian? Is
Yeah.
she
I
Asian?
believe she's
Okay.
Indian.
Is she Indian? I don't know. She always looked like a white lady with shoulder length black hair. I don't know. I could be wrong though.
I'm gonna pull it
But
up. I'm curious
but
now.
she's one of my favorite characters because some of my favorite Spider-Man stories were from J.M. DeMatteis, and like however you say his last name, and he did like The Child Within with Vermin and Harry Osborn, and all the Carnage stuff with her and Cletus. Like she runs Ravencroft Institute, which is, Spider-Man's Arkham, and she's
Right.
like she's way more interesting than any character that has ever been attempted to be connected to Arkham Asylum ever was. Like I love Dr. Kafka. And so to see her reduced to like this weird German dude in the Amazing
Hell
Spider-Man
yeah.
suit, that was the weirdest moment ever. The rest of that movie, though, I actually kind of like, even though it's totally an edited mess because you can tell what they cut out and what they left in. But Andrew gave a great performance as Peter and Spider-Man. The Gwen Stacy death, like right down to her costume, was well done. It's
Yeah.
just that,
Oh my
like,
god, dude. And I honestly thought for a second, I was like, maybe they're not gonna kill her.
right,
Maybe they're not gonna kill her. And not only did they have the snap, but she splatted.
right,
What's funny is that if they had just dialed up the rating on that just for that scene, that would have been the bloodiest scene in every Spider-Man movie.
right.
Because her head smashed into that concrete.
They should have done two things. They should have solved the parents arc in the first movie instead of dragging it into the second one. Otherwise, like those two movies back to back as a little duology are like a pretty decent telling of the Stacy saga, you know, of
Yeah.
like Captain Stacy's death and Gwen's death, because they're very tightly knit in the fact that like Peter is like this young kid making mistakes and he couldn't help but want to be with Gwen, even though Captain Stacy told him not to.
Might be right. Kafka looks like she was white, nonetheless.
Even though in the comics it was actually him saying keep Gwen safe. He didn't say stay away from Gwen.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's a pretty decent telling like of like the Stacy saga. It's just that in the middle of it, they were doing this dumb world building, and like some of the villains, like especially Electro and Harry, were just undercooked. You know,
it fell to the same thing that DC fell to. It was we are building for sure. We're building to this enormous thing,
right?
But like you don't have to do that right off the bat. Like that's the thing that like DC and even Sony, like when they saw Marvel building, they were like, how can we do that but faster?
Right.
Because they were trying to compete. And I think that's the problem. The problem is that DC, when they set out to make the DCEU, they set out to create a competing group of movies. They're like, we will make movies that will take tickets away from MCU movies.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that we will fucking go see both if they're good. We will happily see Batman 1 and 2, Superman 1 and 2, Wonder Woman 1 and 2, Flash 1 and 2, and then go see Justice League. Right. If you did it right.
Exactly, yeah.
But when you do
Race
Superman, Batman and Superman, also Wonder Woman, Justice League, that's fast, man.
How dumb is it that Gotham and Metropolis are over the bay from each other?
Sister cities. But that's to be fair, that honestly kind of just fits within the like DC canon, because like Keystone City, Central City,
right?
Flash. Like
I had always in my head imagined New York as Metropolis and Chicago as Gotham. You know, like growing up as a kid.
What's funny?
Like,
it's the exact opposite way around.
Yeah, because I know one of New York's like old timey nicknames is Gotham, but like there's just something so Chicago about Gotham City in the comic books, where it's just like the corrupt politicians and the gangsters, and you know what I mean,
It's
the
true. That's
some
true.
of that
That's true.
stuff, you know, like
That's true. But they were on a they were on the they were on an ocean front. That's
ah,
the only thing. The Gotham's always been on an ocean front.
gotcha.
Uh, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, yeah, because
I always felt like
Gotham Harbor. Yeah,
Superman should have the bigger city, you know what I mean, because like he's got so many powers, he can be anywhere,
it should.
you
But
know.
I also think I think. Well, the thing is, it's in Kansas, right? So it's I would say it's probably like what the best of Chicago and the best of New York is what Metropolis is.
Hmm.
Because like Metropolis still has its organized crime. Like Intergang, it's high tech organized crime. That's a
Oh, for
big
sure.
staple of Metropolis. So like
Right.
I think it's like the best and prettiest things about both of those cities, and then the worst and dirtiest things about both of those cities are what Gotham
Right.
is.
So there's yeah, my thing is, if I was chosen, if somebody told me I had to rewatch one of the sagas, the Raimi trilogy or the Amazing Two, I would take the Amazing Two because I like them better just because
Agreed.
of Spider-Man and Emma. But because there's such a mess, like in some spots in those movies, it also makes you pine for the simplicity of the Raimi movies, where it's just like just on a plot level, you know what I mean? Where it's like
Yeah. I mean,
Green
they're
Goblin, then
everything
Doc
in
Ock,
the
then well, the third one got messy, but you know what I mean.
but even then, all three concluded their stories.
Right,
The Rainy trilogy ends. The Amazing Saga barely began.
right,
Like the Stacy saga, the Stacy storyline concluded. They cut Mary Jane, who was supposed to be in the movie,
yeah, Shailene
but
Woodley or whatever.
yeah, but like they built a shit ton of world
Yeah,
and set like the mysterious dude, the
yeah,
tons of
Mr. That was supposed to be Mr. Fears.
yeah, yeah. That dude, the fucking all the fucking tech from Oscorp, just it literally ends on, hey, Rhino now has a giant mech suit.
Right.
Cut to credits. Like I literally I got so fucking mad, dude. When he was like, he swings it, I was like, here it comes. Cut to black. I was like, oh, you motherfuckers. Because that was like, it was in the trailer. Like,
Right.
how fucking dare you show me the literal last moment of this film in the trailer?
Yeah, seriously, that was stupid.
Oh, I was
So
so
Sony
mad.
sucks at marketing. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they're really
Between
bad.
between the Amazing Spider-Man movies and Ghostbusters 16, it's like whoever markets their shit, just get rid of them. Like
Yeah.
they release like 20,000 clips all over the place. They make these awful trailers. Like it's just like, oh, knock it off. But jumping into the MCU Spider-Man real quick, I probably got to go in like 10 minutes. But like um I like them, but I don't love them. Like they're good enough. When I
I
saw,
feel you.
what's funny is when I saw Homecoming. First of all, I like Tom Holland. I think the most Spider-Man-y he's ever been on screen out of all Spider-Man portrayals in a major motion picture was in Civil War. Like when
Yeah.
he shows up to that fight and he's quipping left and right and he's
Yeah.
kicking the shit out of people he shouldn't be, but he is way more powerful than. I'm like, oh my god, they did it. Those motherfuckers did it. They got Spider-Man right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I saw Homecoming and I was like, all right, wait, he was a badass, but now he's like Curious George and he's like falling all over the place and stuff. You know what I mean? Like when he like lands, he's not perching. He like lands and he trips. You know what I mean? Like every single time. It's like, come on. Like I know he's supposed to be a kid, but he's supposed to be like really good at what he does as
Yeah.
Spider-Man. So like some of that annoyed me. Otherwise, it was a great movie, but like or a good movie. Vulture was kind of cool, but like you know how it's like nothing ever dies in Hollywood. Remember like when Kevin Smith famously told that story about the spider, you know, and then it ended up in
Yeah.
Wild Wild West. So it's like because nothing ever dies in Hollywood. I remember reading about what was supposed to happen in Spider-Man 4, and there was supposed to be like Vulture and his daughter, and Spider-Man was in love with his daughter, and the daughter was supposed to either be Black Cat or another Vulture, like Vulturess or something like that.
Right.
There were like all these treatments and stuff, you know what I mean? So that stuff festers and it like congeals in a corner, and then it like attaches itself to something else. So like
Oh,
when
that's funny.
when he opens up the door to Liz's place and you see Adrian Toomes standing there, Michael Keaton, in my head, that was the first thing that I was like, they did the Vulture daughter thing. Oh, like what? Who kept
That's
that
funny.
around? You know what I mean? Like, I
That's
don't
funny.
know.
The only thing I remember when they were talking about doing a Spider-Man 4 from the Raimi era was they were like, we're gonna go darker and we're gonna do everything. We're gonna get darker. We're gonna go do Carnage. I was like, wow, they're gonna do Carnage. Like that was ballsy. Like especially coming out of the Raimi trilogy, like those first three movies, for them to be like, we're gonna do Carnage. I was like, are you though?
Yeah.
Like if it's gonna be like this, you shouldn't.
Oh, there was some like weird like treatments for Amazing Spider-Man 3 where it was supposed to be like Gwen was gonna be Carnage like she was in the Ultimate Universe or whatever, and I would have been like, oh please no. Like the um but Homecoming was decent, but like it didn't blow me away. It wasn't the amazing, and by amazing I mean it wasn't the incredible follow-up to the Spider-Man in Civil War
Yeah,
that I needed, you know.
agreed.
And then he was just fine in the two Avengers movies after that. I'm like, oh hey, there's Spider-Man, you know, like because he's a side character, but like you know they get him mostly right. And then like then Far From Home, I ended up really liking. Um, that might default be my favorite Spider-Man movie. I don't think, like I said, none of them are as good as picking up a comic and reading the real Spider-Man. Like the
Yeah.
real
Like,
Spider-Man,
I
I
mean, they're
just
never going to be.
love that guy. Right. Um, but that was good because they nailed Mysterio. Like, despite him working for Tony Stark or whatever, it's like whatever. That's just MCU.
Yeah,
Compressing stuff.
I did exactly. I didn't think that's like what a lot of people like latch onto. They're like, what is he? What does everything have to go back to Stark? I'm like, I mean, like Stark started the universe, so it's kind of
Hmm.
like his tendrils are all over the place.
Hmm.
So it makes sense. I mean, it's like, why does every Batman villain at some point work for Wayne Industries? Because it's Wayne
Right.
fucking Industries. They own everything. Like,
Exactly.
like, oh, Dr. Freeze happened. He used to work at, this was in the New 52. I don't know if was ever before the New 52, but like Victor Freeze worked at Wayne Enterprises.
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't like, why is he got to work at Wayne? Like, it makes
Right.
sense. Like, it's the it's the richest company in Gotham, if not
Oh man.
like top 5 in the country. Like, of course you'd want to work there, especially if you want some fancy fucking technology to freeze your not wife. It was like this weird obsession thing in the New 52. It was a really
Yeah,
weird story.
that was my problem with it.
That's
Like
a really weird story.
I usually like Scott Snyder, I usually do, but that story, I was like, dude, did you just like, you know that like Mr. Freeze's origin won an Emmy, right? Like like this is the Mr. Freeze story. Like you don't mess with that, dude. Like this shit won an Emmy by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna tell me that you decided just on a whim to change it so that Mr. Freeze's wife like wasn't his wife? You know, like that rubbed me wrong.
It was some chick at the office that he was into that didn't
Yeah,
even know him.
that turns him from like this tragic figure to like just this desperate dopey guy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like a
And it's
fucking
like,
creeper.
yeah, exactly. You could read tragedy into it from that level, but it's not the same as like the
Yeah,
poetic justice of the Victor Freeze of the animated series that got readapted into the comics, you know.
yeah,
So
and that's why I didn't care about like Mysterio working for Stark. Like that
mhm.
to me, that make perfect fucking sense. Like, yeah, he's a tech wizard. Makes
Yeah,
sense that he would work for the techiest of tech companies.
they got him really
What's he
right.
gonna do? Go work at Facebook? Like,
Yeah, I remember at the time too when there were trailers for that movie that people were like, "No, Mysterio's like from another universe" and all that stuff. I'm like, have you ever read a Mysterio comic?
right?
Like, you know, like
I was
come
like,
on.
I was giving them the possibility of that being true because I was
Yeah,
like, all right, maybe like maybe we're gonna do some multiverse shit. I'm like, this is like a weird way to start that, but all
yeah.
right, maybe we do some weird multiverse shit. Because I think even the trailer they had even like said it like they had cut it in a way, and I think they added dialogue because they always do that to make it
Mhm.
sound like that because of the snap, like some portal opened up or some shit. And I was like, I could see that. I get like a lot of power, some sort of tear in reality. I was like trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. But
Mhm.
then as soon as he was on screen, I was like, oh, he's lying through his fucking teeth. He's
Right.
just he's just Quentin Becking all over these motherfuckers.
Right.
Like I
Dude,
was like, oh, this is just classic Mysterio. This is
you
good.
know what I love too is because I was so sick of like the father figure, sympathetic villain stuff they keep pulling in every other goddamn Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, no,
That
he was an
like
asshole.
that, yeah, is that like he appeared that way at first,
Right.
you know, but then when he became who he really is, he's just like, I don't care, I'll kill high school kids to like cover my ass, and
Yep.
like I am,
Yep.
and like he even like threatened his own employees with machine guns and stuff, you know what I mean? And he was just a piece of shit. And you're like, it was a testament to Jake Gyllenhaal's acting ability too, because he was like, you know, like having to play this like fake version of himself through the first half, and then showing that he's
Yeah.
a asshole in like the
Yeah.
second half.
Because when they revealed when Peter left and he gave, I think when he gave him the glasses
Mm-hmm.
and he left the set and they all raised the glasses, and I was like, so this is like some sort of like for a second I was like, it's not the transition, like the transition hadn't happened yet, he hadn't shown his like cruelty yet.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, maybe this guy's just like scamming so he can like sell it to the highest bidder. He wants some money out of this, like he feels he's owed some cash or whatever, like something, like it
Right.
felt a little simple right at that moment. But then when he, like you said, when he threatened his own people, I was like, oh, this guy's fucking sick. Like he's
Right.
the problem. Like,
And like, oh man, those like nightmare sequences where Mysterio's messing with him and everything, like, oh, that was right out of the comics. Some of that was literally panels from comics.
Yeah.
And like it was so cool. I even like, it's kind of inspired like toward the end how it's like, since Mysterio's a special effects wizard or whatever, to an extent, it's, you know, similar in the MCU, but like that like he is wearing like pretty much a Mysterio mocap suit like in the movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was kind of neat. Like
Yeah,
when he's
I
on
like
the
that.
on the bridge at the end, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was cool. And I love that Spider-Man was much more of a focused badass in this movie than he was in Homecoming. He wasn't stumbling all over the place. He was like, that was a great Spider-Man kick-ass moment at the end where he shuts his eyes and Peter Tingle takes over and he just wrecks all that stuff. And then Mysterio reaches out for him and he grabs the invisible gun, you know, like
I really felt that he, like, Peter as a character had a really good arc in that, because he was like, oh, I have this fucking burden on my shoulders, like I'm seen as like the new Iron Man. Like those are big fucking shoes to step into, especially like this guy literally just sacrificed himself to save all of reality.
Right, totally.
Like that's a big fucking hat to put on.
Right.
So
as usual though, not enough quips, and it really angers me that like they released that. I didn't get to see it in theaters.
Even as when he was what was it, Night Monkey or whatever, I was expecting at least a little more freedom then, because he was like, not Spider-Man. Like,
right. And there's a deleted scene that like I watched on YouTube from somebody filming in the theater or whatever, because it pisses me off that they haven't released this on like Blu-ray or anything like that yet. But there's a director's cut of that movie that came out in theaters a couple months after, so it could like make all the money that year. And
oh, I didn't know that.
There's a scene where it was in some of the trailers too, where like he was in his Iron Spider costume in a Italian restaurant fighting a bunch of mobsters. But like I saw the scene in its entirety like on YouTube or whatever from like an iPhone video, and like he is cracking wise left and right. It is so funny. And I'm like, why did they cut that?
It was the opening scene. It was the opening scene, because they showed most of that scene in the trailer.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the movie, it was like, not that most of that scene wasn't there.
Yeah, he's like mouthing off to the cops and everything. It's like, oh, come on. Why didn't you keep that?
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? We just like pivoted to the hey, with the fucking donor thing, the
right? Like a guy that they were at. The guy blows him away with a machine gun and he like falls off a table like, and then he goes up and goes, just kidding, it's bulletproof, and like steals his gun, and then like his arms like grab like a pepper shaker and hits a guy with it, and he's like, fresh pepper, you know. I'm like, oh come on, why did you cut this? It's the most Spider-Man-y thing ever, and you cut it.
That's the shit. That's what I'm saying. Like the movies don't have this like solid character grounding.
Yeah,
that's why like the Captain America movies, like Winter Soldier's a great movie, but like it's kind of still an ensemble movie, and it's like very, very like, okay, he's going after his friend, like that's kind of the whole thing. But like we don't really get to see Steve grow as a character in his movies.
mm-hmm.
A little bit here and there, but like for the most part, Steve Rogers at the end of Endgame, it's the same Steve Rogers he was at the beginning.
It's true. Part of me's kind of okay with that though. Like every once in a while, like I think about character arcs and stuff and how much people obsess over them, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, people have to go through some kind of arc, I guess, but like
just some sort of personal growth. I'm not asking for a lot.
Yeah, but it's like, it's also like, did James Bond have to? You know what I mean? Like in like his classic era and stuff, or is he we know who that guy is? You know, like
his classic era, no, but like he has more recently, like certainly in the current films. But even in the ones from the 90s, like I think he retired at one point and like came back, and like there was different elements to it. Like there was something happening. But I'm not asking for, not everyone has to go through a Tony Stark level of fucking evolution.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Also, because like he had 3 films, like they really dove into the fucking PTSD that he had from New York. Like there was a whole lot to that. Like a big driving force of the MCU is his entire PTSD from the first Avengers movie. Like
sometimes I think people take the shortcut out and give a character a redemption arc. You know what I mean? Like they have to start out selfish and become unselfish at the end, even if it doesn't fit the character. And that's kind of it's not cheating, because that can be done amazingly, because that's what Spider-Man is. But like in the comics anyway, because he was being a selfish asshole and didn't catch the guy who was
because the majority of that time that we know of, well, not that we don't know of, happens between panels. He's not doing the wrestling thing for like a couple days. He's doing it for weeks, months. He made TV appearances and shit.
Right.
Like
totally.
He was a personality to like build up this ego. But yeah, we skip all that in the movies and shit.
Right. Totally. And I guess we have to headcanon it in that happens in the MCU. Since they didn't show it. I mean, they didn't need to, but
I'm hoping, man, this third movie, I'm so excited for it because it's just leaning into comic book ridiculousness. That's when I don't know if you saw any of DC Fandom. I just did an episode of this where I just
saw the Flash trailer and the Batman trailer. That's it.
The Flash trailer, really. That's all I wanted to bring up. There are two berries in that, and he's about to whip off the fucking cover off the 89 Batmobile.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the shit I'm talking about.
I'm in.
Weird.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's dumb, but I'm in. Like, completely in. Like, I'm not going to deny that that's fun, you know?
89 Batman is in this? Fan service? Yeah, please. Fan service. That's what we want. Because like
lately we need some. That's why I'm looking forward to Ghostbusters Afterlife, one of my other biggest fandoms.
It's not getting great box office numbers, apparently.
Oh, really?
It's like,
that's a shame. I hope it does all right.
I was psyched about it. I had some thoughts about it, but like I don't know, like the last one like missed an opportunity that I think they could have literally changed 6 sentences in the whole thing to just make it part of the universe. Like it could have literally just been, oh, this is happening like 20 years ago. This shit happened. Everyone stopped talking about it because it stopped happening.
Right.
We're now doing this because it's happening again. And then like, because why would that cabbie say, I ain't afraid of no ghosts?
I wish it was that cast with Ivan Reitman directing and a decent script. You know what I mean? Because he knows how to handle his own property, because like the Paul Feig Ghostbusters made it into like this wacky skit or something, or like parody of Ghostbusters with the weird bright colors and nothing was scary and everything. And it's just like, Ghostbusters is kind of played straight, except for the wisecracks.
Yeah,
there's wisecracks throughout the whole
yeah.
thing, and
They came at it from the wrong direction for sure.
yeah, it's a memorable comedy, but at the end of the day, they live in a horror universe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's why I'm excited for the new one. Like I heard it's like it looks like Jason Reitman making a Ghostbusters movie instead of Ivan Reitman making a Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah,
and I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, looks a little newer, a little more polished. But it's like it's got a gunner seat. I was like, that's so fucking cool. Like,
I know, right? And obviously, I'm a huge fan. Sapphire Spectre it came from my lifelong fascination with the supernatural that stemmed from watching Ghostbusters way too much as a kid. So
I just literally just earlier today I watched a whole thing about the real Ghostbusters cartoon and kind of how that came about and its whole
nice.
lifespan. I don't know if you've ever heard of the channel. I always hype it up to people who like the shit. Toy Galaxy. They do these like wonderful retrospectives about like various properties.
This is right up my alley. Like, dude, I'm a YouTube junkie. That's all I do, is like I work from home and I watch YouTube. That's all I do.
Toy Galaxy all day, every day. They do like these in-depth. They did a whole thing. I didn't know. This is like my new favorite fact to tell people. When they did the G.I. Joe movie and the Transformers movie, the Transformers movie came out first, and Optimus died obviously, and like kids fucking hated that because it was like their favorite characters all died in that movie. So the G.I. Joe movie that came out like fucking months later, they were like, fuck that. Like, we need to add in that like he's not fatally fucking wounded with this. By the way, snake through the heart, pretty fucking fatal, but fine. It just put him in a coma. So because like the kids were freaking out, like,
oh yeah,
like people were losing their shit over it. So they were like, oh fuck, like if we also kill off Duke like 6 months later, these kids are gonna lose their minds. Like they're never gonna watch our shows again.
I am
so
just
like I just
young
thought that was
enough
funny
to
as
not
shit.
I am just young enough to not have been affected by this. So it's like
me too.
I was born late in '81, so like Transformers and I got on He-Man and I got on Real Ghostbusters. Those were like my two, well, more so Real Ghostbusters and anything Batman related. Even the Adam West show, watching it with my dad and stuff growing up, were like my big things. But like Transformers, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, that happened all around me,
Gotcha.
Like I didn't really get into it. I like Voltron and like even watched like, because I had a sister, I watched Gem and the Holograms and Rainbow Bright a lot. So I don't know.
Transformers was for me because I got it like dumb early when I was in Europe still. When I was in Croatia, we had fucking I don't know that many people saw these things, but it was essentially a all-in-one like home theater thing. Mind you, this is like 1992. It's a stereo, like a boombox kind of thing, got a cassette player and everything, but it also had a TV in it that's like 4-inch. But like I watched G1 Transformers on that, in like, localized for Croatia while I was over there. So nice. When I came here, like that was the first thing I sought out. So yeah, Transformers, I wasn't there for like the initial of it because we were just getting American TV. So like we didn't get a lot of American cartoons and shit yet. But like right before I left Croatia for America, I started watching Transformers early in the mornings. And when we got here, that was like that and Power Rangers is what I latched on to.
Yeah.
But like this channel, Toy Galaxy, they do these like super in-depth shit that you forgot about. They did an episode on Dino Riders. They did an episode. I always forget the name of this fucking show, but it was like this kid who was driving his car at night and he like crashes into this building and he merges with his car and he can transform into it.
Yeah.
They did a whole episode about that, dude. They did a whole episode about it. So nice. Yeah, I think cool. You'll love it.
I'm gonna go subscribe to that like as soon as I leave here.
You should. It's a fantastic.
That's channel. Cool. Did you ever watch like The Toys That Made Us and the Movies That Made Us on Netflix? Also,
I watched the Movies That Made Us, and that's that shit was super cool because I watched the Elf episode, and dude, that I didn't.
The Elf episode? Oh, is there a new batch of them? Shit.
I thought there was. Yeah. I mean, unless it's something else that my wife was watching. My wife was watching it on Netflix or Hulu or whatever the fuck she was watching it on. And that was like, it was like a whole episode about like Elf and how they made it, and like it was in development hell for a long time, but then they showed a lot of the like how they made it, the like perspective
Yeah.
shit that they did. And like I said before, I'm a process junkie, so I was like, that's so fucking cool. Like, I'm, the camera's
Nice.
back here with the girl. She walks over and like fake hands him a thing. He's in the background because he's meant to be like, or he's in the foreground rather because he's meant to be super huge. Like, it's this whole thing, and I was like, this is fucking dope.
Nice.
Like I just love
That's
like
cool.
how that shit is made.
The movies that made us is specifically on Netflix, and it's Ghostbusters, Home Alone, Dirty Dancing, Forrest Gump, a couple others, and
Oh yeah, I think that's what she was
it's
watching.
really cool and interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they must have done
Oh, I
another
wonder if
season.
there's some new ones. I'll have to check that out then. Yeah, the toys that made us. The one episode I have to recommend that is like essential is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because it not only gets into the toy line, but it gets into everything from the inception of Mirage Studios all the way
Oh
through
wow.
to where it is now. And they reunite Eastman and Laird at the end, and they're
Oh,
like
that's
talking
cool.
to each other for the first time in like 15 years or
Oh yeah,
more or
because
something.
they had a falling out.
Yeah,
I forgot about that, dude. I completely forgot about that.
it was super cool. Yeah, you
Holy
got to see
shit.
like that. It's like, they had this startup, made their little comic, and then knew a toy guy, and then the guy made the toys, and then the toys transitioned into the animated series. It was really cool. Yeah.
That's wild, man. That's so cool. And like that, that's the cool shit where it's like you had this thing where it's like these two guys just like made a thing, and that just now it
Right.
is the probably one of the like top 5 most recognizable brands on the planet,
Right.
like historically.
Oh, that's what I'm hoping for. I have a cool logo. At least I got that going for me.
Your logo is very cool. I actually, that's every time I look at your stuff, I'm like, it's like it's an eye-catching logo. Like when I'm
It's
scrolling
gonna
on
be fun.
Facebook, it's
I'm
like,
really trying to draw a lot more lately so I can get this done before I die. No, or turn
what I
45.
want to see from you, and this is me, like I said, process junkie. I have probably 20 sketchbooks over there. I want to see a sketchbook. Like, give me a
Nice.
sketchbook tier next time. Like, give me like various, however big it is. If you want to make a full-on big ass, you know, fucking coffee table size sketchbook with a bunch of different shit in it, or if you just want to do like a comic book size sketchbook, I'm 100% down for that.
That would be
Because
cool. I wonder how much it costs to create one of those artist edition things that like IDW does, where it's like it's 11 by 17 and you actually see the coffee stains and stuff of like Gil Kane's art or like whatever,
oh yeah.
Yeah, that stuff is cool.
Yeah, but I mean that's one of those high tier things, you know.
Yeah, I'm starting to do a lot more inking on my stuff in general. Like before I like relied too much on the colors or whatever, except for this one. The I took out that map in the background to make my own Chicago map, but yeah,
That's super
I'm starting
cool.
to try and make the original art look a lot better these days and not rely so much on coloring, but it's still part of it.
That's super cool, man. Do you do uh your own colors, or are you,
Mhm.
so you're
Yep, and
full
writing. That's
so
why it takes forever.
full team. Damn, good on you, man. I realized many moons ago that my art is not production quality. Like I can't draw a symmetrical figure to save my life. So like, I've got some really cool pieces that are like one arm and like the right side of a body. Can't get the other arm to look normal.
I gotcha.
I made
It's
a
all
lot
about
of
the
cyborgs that
gestures.
way. I made a
You'll
lot
learn a
of
lot
cyborgs
from
that way.
you'll learn a lot from figure drawing. That's like where it all is like how the spine moves or whatever.
I can't. It's fun. I went to art school. Like I did live, like life drawing and shit like that. Like something doesn't click. Something doesn't translate to. I can draw the right side of. I mean, when you're looking at it, the left side of the thing. When
Yeah.
I get to the other side, I can't match it up. I like I said, I ended up with a lot of cyborgs that way. I've got like I started with like I'm gonna draw Ryu. And he's like a martial artist on this side, and then I couldn't do anything with the arm, so it just became a giant metal arm.
Right. Dude, a lot of
I
times I'm drawing like skinny people in street clothes. You know what I mean? So it's like I I wouldn't hire me to draw Kazar. You know what I mean? That's I don't know.
I
Like when
feel
it
you.
comes
I
to
feel
like
you.
those crazy like Joe Kubert like leg muscles and stuff, it's like I just can't. I'm not programmed to do that. Like I don't know.
I have like a weird. I have like a not a weird, but like I have a true affinity for that like like quality detailed art that I've the more I see like low detail, like more anime influenced stuff in comics, the more annoyed I get. But it's just
Right.
because recently, the one I just was looking at was West Coast Avengers, the most recent run, was done in an anime style, like a couple different style, but it was like a flat kind of like low detail style. It
Yeah.
wasn't bad. It wasn't bad art. Like I think it was perfectly good for, especially for like the kind of tone of the story. But like if I just saw the art, I'd be like, kind of like a weak Hawkeye. Like I want a little more detail in my Hawkeye. Like,
Yeah. I've been trying to just incorporate more detail on my stuff lately and just lay those blacks out. Even if I don't need to, even if it's gonna be like all black, like in the computer or something, it's like I'll just do it on the page because I want to make it look cool in a portfolio or something. You know what I mean?
hell yeah, dude.
But
That's good stuff to have. Good stuff to see.
yeah, I'm in the middle of the third issue right now, which is I've been coloring on my iPad lately, which has been a lifesaver.
Dude,
But yeah, this lady, I'm excited to get to this story and have been for a while. This is the Violet Void, which is like gonna be Sapphire Spectre's Venom, you know. So it's gonna be
that's oh, I get it. Sapphire Spectre Violet Void. I see what you
yeah,
mean.
exactly.
Clever.
And her little double-sided scythe, whatever, however you say that, is like kind of like how she has like her S blade, you know,
Yeah,
like kind of like positioned like two V's, you know what I mean?
nice.
Also, it can like rotate like really fast. So she's got like a spinning blades on both sides and swings it around at her and stuff like.
Hell yeah. That's
Yeah,
I'm entranced right now. Like I'm like, let's go.
it's
Let's
gonna
see
be
what she's
fun,
like.
and I can't wait to. I'm at the point where I'm doing shout outs. I know, but like December Lace, who's a really cool cosplay chick, is like getting ready to play Violet Void on like the covers for it, and it's gonna be really cool. She like is
That's super
a
cool.
local Illinoisian and used to be in like underground wrestling and stuff. So
Oh
yeah.
wow. Wow.
Mhm.
Dude,
She's a cool chick.
I'll have to have you back on. We'll talk in depth about
Yeah.
Sapphire Spectre. Like I wanna we'll I'm gonna hit you
Dude.
up after this. We'll set up a way for me to get those digital copies because I
It
really
was
want to read
honestly it was honestly really fun not to for a while. Because usually I'm like, well, the thing is, she's a girl from Chicago who goes in the supernatural world, and I'm like doing the elevator pitch again. But oh my god, dude, it was awesome to geek out for like so long like this.
Dude, hell yeah. Hell yeah. It was a blast,
Killer.
man.
Oh yeah.
Appreciate you coming on. This was exciting, super fun. A lot of like I don't get to, like you said, I don't get to geek out like this with a lot of people.
Mhm.
Usually if I have someone on, it is like to talk about their specific project. So it's nice to
Exactly.
just go off on this. But we will have you back to talk about your book. When's the next Kickstarter? Just for my own
Uh,
information.
Meaning for like late January, early February.
Okay.
Because
Cool.
the second one's being printed right now, the one with the little psycho chibi, and yeah, so
Dope.
as soon as that's sent out, I'm like already got a couple of covers coming in from artists for variant covers. I'm going overboard this time. There's too many of them, but
No such thing as overboard, sir. More, always more.
right.
All right, sir. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the exceedingly long amount of time that I've taken from your day.
It's all good. It's fun as fuck.
All right, man. Appreciate you. I'll see you. All right, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, any thoughts, please hit me up on Twitter at Boss Sincere, BossSinseer. Happy to have any conversations. If you disagree, if you agree, love to hear it. If you're watching, comments are down below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.